Take your hand off her." The voice came from the darkest corner of the room, low and calm, and every glass in the lounge stopped moving. Ryan Caldwell had Olivia's wrist twisted behind her back, dragging her toward the storage room where no camera could see, and 40 people watched a young woman being hauled into the dark and did nothing. Nobody breathed. Until one man rose from the shadows of the VIP booth, and when Ryan turned to sneer at him, the whole city's most feared name stepped into the light. If this story moves you, please subscribe and stay to the very end, and comment which city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has traveled tonight. Olivia Carter had learned a long time ago that the most dangerous men were not the ones who shouted. They were the ones who smiled while they hurt you, and Ryan Caldwell was smiling now. His grip tightened on her wrist until she could feel the bones grinding, and still he kept that thin, polished smile on his face, the one he used for customers, the one that made people believe he was charming. "Let go of me," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake. That was the thing about Olivia. She had a way of staying calm in the exact moment when calm made no sense. "You're embarrassing yourself," Ryan said through his teeth. "Come to the back. We'll talk in private. You don't want a scene in front of these people." "You're the one making a scene," she answered. "You're the one holding my arm." For a second, just a second, his smile flickered. He had not expected her to talk back. In 3 years of running the floor at the Black Rose Lounge, Ryan had never once been questioned by a barmaid, not by anyone under 30, not by anyone who needed the paycheck. And Olivia needed the paycheck more than most. He knew it. He counted on it. "You forget who signs off on your hours," he said, lower now, so only she could hear. "You forget who decides whether you have a job on Monday. Keep talking, sweetheart. Keep talking and see what happens." That word, sweetheart. He said it like a threat, and she felt the old fear rise up in her chest, the fear she had carried since she was a girl, the fear of being small and unheard in a room full of people who could crush you. But something in her refused to move toward that hallway. Some instinct older than the fear told her that once she went into the dark with a man like Ryan, she would never fully come back. "I said, let go," she repeated. The lounge held its breath. Olivia was 23 years old, and to the regular customers of the Black Rose, she was the reason they came back. She was not the most experienced person on the staff. She was not the one with connections, or the one whose uncle knew the owners, or the one who had gone to some fancy hospitality school on somebody else's money. She had none of that. What she had was rarer and harder to fake. She remembered people. She remembered that the old man by the window liked his coffee with exactly 1 sugar and a splash of cream, and that his wife had passed the year before, and that on Thursday nights he came in just to not be alone. She remembered that the nervous young couple who came for their anniversary had saved for 2 months for that single dinner, so she quietly told the kitchen to send out a dessert on the house. She believed, deep in her bones, that hospitality had nothing to do with alcohol. It had to do with making a stranger feel, for 1 hour, that the world had a place for them, and people felt it. That was why they loved her. That was why tonight, 3 of the most important customers in the room had stood up and toasted her by name, and told the whole floor that Olivia Carter was the best thing about the Black Rose Lounge. And that was exactly why Ryan Caldwell was dragging her toward a hallway with murder in his eyes. "You made me look like a fool out there," he hissed as he pulled. "Standing there smiling while they praised you. Do you know how that looks? Do you know what people think when the barmaid gets more applause than the man running the floor?" "I didn't ask them to say anything," Olivia said. "You didn't have to. You've been working them for months, sweet little Olivia, remembering their birthdays, remembering their grandkids. You think I don't see what you're doing? You're building a name for yourself on my floor, in my house, and I am done watching it." She almost laughed, and that was dangerous, because she knew if she laughed he would explode. But the sheer twisted logic of it stunned her. She had been kind, and to a man like Ryan, kindness looked like a weapon aimed at him. He could not imagine that a person might simply be good. He could only imagine that she was scheming, the way he schemed, because his own heart was the only map he had of the human heart, and it was a poisoned map. "Ryan," she said, softer now, trying one last time to reach whatever was left in him. "I'm not your enemy. I've never once tried to take your job. I just do my work. That's all. Please, let go of my arm and we can both go back to the floor and finish the night." For a moment she thought it might work. His grip loosened just slightly. His eyes darted around the room and he seemed to remember, dimly, that 40 people were watching. But then his pride roared back louder than his sense, because men like Ryan would rather burn the whole house down than admit, in front of an audience, that a woman half their size had made them stop. "No," he said, "you're going to the back, and you're going to learn some respect." He pulled. Olivia's shoulder wrenched. A gasp went up from a nearby table, and somewhere in the crowd, an old regular named Harold half rose from his chair, his napkin still tucked into his collar, his mouth open to say something. But he was 74 years old, and his knees did not work the way they used to, and by the time he found his voice, the moment had already passed him by. He sat back down, ashamed, hating himself, the way good people hate themselves when they freeze. Because that was the terrible truth of that night. The Black Rose Lounge was full of decent human beings, kind grandmothers, retired teachers, a man who had spent 40 years fixing other people's cars. Not one of them wanted to see a young woman hurt, and not one of them moved. Fear does that. Fear turns a room full of good people into a wall of silent witnesses, each one waiting for someone else to be brave first. Olivia understood that, even in that moment. She had learned it the hard way. She had tried, twice before, to report Ryan Caldwell. She had gone to the owners with everything. She had names. She had dates. She had 2 other girls who had quit rather than keep working under him. Girls who cried in the break room and then simply stopped showing up. Olivia had brought all of it, carefully, respectfully, hoping that surely the people at the top would care. They had not cared. The owners of the Black Rose were investors who lived in another city and looked at the lounge as a line on a spreadsheet. Ryan kept the numbers looking good. Ryan kept the liquor cost down and the reviews up, at least on paper. And so Ryan was untouchable. When Olivia had finished laying out everything she knew, the manager the owners sent had folded his hands, looked at her with tired, uninterested eyes and said, "Ryan says you've been difficult. He says you've got an attitude problem. I'd be careful if I were you about making accusations you can't prove." She had walked out of that meeting understanding something that changed her forever. The system was not broken. The system was working exactly the way it was built to work. It protected the money. It protected the men who made the money. And it left girls like her standing alone. So she had stopped reporting. Not because she gave up on justice, but because she learned that justice, in that building, was a door that only opened from the inside, and none of them would ever let her in. Which meant that on this rainy Tuesday night, when Ryan Caldwell decided to drag her into the dark, Olivia already knew that no one was coming to save her. Not the owners, not the manager, not the 40 frightened good people at their tables. She was going to have to save herself, with nothing but her own 2 feet planted on the floor and her own refusal to be moved. So she planted them. "No," she said, loud enough this time for the whole room to hear. "I am not going anywhere with you." Ryan's face went dark red. The polished smile was gone now, and what was underneath it was ugly, the real face, the one his victims always saw at the very end. "You do not," he said, spitting each word, "get to tell me no." "I just did." He raised his other hand. And in that raised hand, in the way it drew back, there was a promise that the next thing to happen would not be an argument. It would be violence. Olivia saw it coming and she did not flinch. And later, when she tried to explain to herself why she had not flinched, the only answer she could find was that she was simply too tired of being afraid. But the blow never landed, because a voice came from the darkest corner of the room. From the VIP section, where a single man had been sitting alone in a booth all night, nursing a drink he had barely touched, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. The voice was not loud. That was the strange part. In a room this tense, you would expect a shout. Instead, the voice was low and even and almost gentle, and precisely because it was gentle, it cut through the noise like a blade through silk. "Take your hand off her." Everyone turned. The man was rising slowly from the shadows of the corner booth. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit that had clearly not come off any rack, and he moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who had never in his adult life had to hurry for anyone. His face was calm, too calm. There was a stillness in him that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up, the stillness of deep water, the kind that hides a current strong enough to drown you. Ryan turned, still holding Olivia's arm, and looked the stranger up and down. And here Ryan made the first of many mistakes he would make that night. He saw a customer. Just another customer. A well-dressed man who thought money gave him the right to interrupt. "Sit down," Ryan said, and he actually laughed. A short, ugly bark of a laugh. "This is staff business. It doesn't concern you." The stranger took another step forward. His hands were loose at his sides. He was not clenching his fists. He did not need to. "You're wrong," he said in that same soft voice. "It concerns me very much. Now I'm going to say it one more time, and I want you to listen carefully. Take your hand off her." "Or what?" Ryan sneered. He was playing to the room now, the way a bully plays to a room, trying to win back the crowd he had lost. "You gonna call the manager? Go ahead. I am the manager. I run this floor, and you're just some guy who's had too much to drink, sticking his nose where it doesn't belong." Olivia watched the stranger's face, and she saw something there that Ryan, in his arrogance, completely missed. She saw that the man was not angry. That was what frightened her most. An angry man you could understand. An angry man was still human, still swept up in feeling. But this man was not angry. He was calculating. His eyes moved from Ryan's face to the hand on Olivia's wrist, to Olivia's own face, checking, in a single sweep, whether she was hurt. And when he was satisfied she was frightened but unharmed, his eyes went back to Ryan, and in them was a coldness that had nothing to do with temper and everything to do with a decision already made. "You run this floor," the stranger repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "Is that what you said?" "That's right," Ryan snapped. "So unless you want to be thrown out, sit down and mind your own business." The stranger nodded, as though Ryan had confirmed something for him. Then he reached into his jacket, unhurried, and Ryan flinched, actually flinched, because for one wild second even he did not know what was about to come out of that jacket. But it was only a slim leather wallet. The man opened it, took out a single card, and held it up between two fingers so the light caught it. "My name," he said, "is Vincent Moretti." The name landed on the room like a stone dropped into still water. Olivia felt it more than heard it. She saw a woman 2 tables over put her hand to her mouth. She saw Harold, the old regular, go very pale. She saw 2 businessmen at the bar exchange a look and slowly, quietly, set down their drinks, as if any sudden movement might be unwise because everyone in Chicago knew that name. Vincent Moretti was a name that people said carefully, in low voices, the way you might speak of a storm you had survived. He was rumored to control businesses across the city, to have the ear of powerful men and the fear of dangerous ones, to be able to build a person up or take everything they had with a single phone call. His family's history was written in whispers, and the whispers were dark. People said the Morettis had once ruled parts of this city through means that decent people did not discuss at dinner. People said that crossing a Moretti was the last mistake a man ever made. And this man, this Vincent Moretti, had been sitting quietly in the corner of the Black Rose Lounge for the last 2 hours, watching. Watching Olivia. Watching Ryan. Watching everything. Ryan Caldwell's face, which had been red with fury, drained slowly to the color of old paper. His grip on Olivia's wrist loosened all at once, and she pulled her arm free and stepped back, rubbing the bruised skin, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Ryan started, and his voice had lost every bit of its swagger. "I didn't. Mr. Moretti, I didn't realize." "No," Vincent said. "You didn't." The whole lounge was frozen. Nobody moved. Nobody dared. It was as if a lion had walked into a room full of house cats, and every instinct in every body was telling them to stay perfectly still. Vincent turned his eyes to Olivia for the first time fully, and she braced herself, because she did not know what to expect. She had spent her whole life at the mercy of powerful men, and every one of them had wanted something from her, and she assumed this one was no different. She expected to be looked at the way men like this looked at women. She expected to feel like a thing, but that was not how he looked at her. He looked at her the way you look at a person you have underestimated and are now reconsidering. There was respect in it. There was something almost like recognition. as though he had been searching a crowded room for someone and had finally found the face he was looking for. "Are you hurt?" he asked her. The question was so simple and so unexpected that for a moment Olivia could not answer. In 3 years at the Black Rose, no one in a position of power had ever asked her that, not once. "Are you hurt?" 2 words. She had to swallow before she could speak. "No," she said. "I'm all right." "Good," Vincent said. Then he turned back to Ryan, and the softness left his voice entirely. "You, come with me." "Mr. Moretti, I can explain. She's been causing problems. The customers were. It's a misunderstanding." "Come with me," Vincent said again, and this time there was no room in the words for argument. Ryan swallowed hard and followed, the way a man follows the officer who has just put him under arrest, all the fight gone out of him, his shoulders caving inward. And here is where the night began to turn into something none of them could have predicted. Because Olivia, watching this powerful and terrifying man take Ryan away, felt not relief but a strange new dread. She did not trust powerful men. She had learned not to. And she could not shake the feeling that she had simply traded one dangerous man for another, that she had been rescued by a wolf from a jackal, and that the wolf would want his payment in time. She stood there in the middle of the lounge, 40 faces staring at her, and she did not feel saved. She felt watched. She felt owned. And she hated that feeling more than she had ever hated Ryan. What she did not know, what she could not have known standing there with her wrist still aching, was that Vincent Moretti had not come to the Black Rose Lounge by accident. He was not just another rich man out for a drink. He owned the building. He owned the lounge. He had bought it 3 weeks earlier, quietly, through a company that hid his name as part of a decision he had made to change his life. And he had come tonight, alone, sitting in the shadows where no one would recognize him, for one simple reason. He wanted to see, with his own eyes, how his new investment was really run. Not the polished version the manager reported, the real version. The version that only showed itself when the people in charge thought no one important was watching. And what he had seen had told him everything. He had seen a supervisor who bullied his staff, who took credit for their good work and blamed them for his own failures, who created an atmosphere of fear that seeped into every corner of the room. And he had seen, standing against all of it, a young woman who refused to break. He had watched Olivia for nearly 2 hours before Ryan ever laid a hand on her. He had watched her carry drinks and soothe difficult customers and cover for a nervous new busboy who kept dropping things. He had watched her kneel by an elderly woman's table and listen, really listen, to a long story that had nothing to do with the restaurant and everything to do with a woman who was lonely. He had watched her do 100 small kind things that no one was paying her to do, that no one would ever thank her for, that showed up on no spreadsheet anywhere. And Vincent Moretti, who had spent his whole life around people who performed kindness when it was useful and dropped it the second it was not, had recognized in Olivia something he had almost stopped believing existed. He had recognized a person who was kind because that was simply who she was, whether anyone was watching or not. He had built an empire. He had power most people could not imagine. And in the middle of an ordinary lounge on an ordinary rainy night, he had seen something worth more than all of it, and he was not the kind of man to let it slip away. In a quiet office at the back of the building, with the door closed and the noise of the lounge muffled to nothing, Vincent Moretti did not fire Ryan Caldwell. That surprised everyone who heard about it later. They expected the Mafia boss to destroy the man on the spot, to have him thrown out onto the wet street, to make an example of him. That would have been the easy story. That would have been the story everyone expected from a Moretti. Instead, Vincent sat down behind the desk, folded his hands, and said, "Sit." Ryan sat. "Tell me about the numbers," Vincent said. "The numbers? This lounge is losing money. Slowly, quietly, but it's losing money, and it has been for a year. I want to know why. And I want you to tell me the truth because I already know most of it, and I'll know the moment you lie." So Ryan talked, and the more he talked, the more the picture came into focus, and it was not the picture Ryan meant to paint. He blamed the staff, he blamed lazy workers and difficult customers and bad luck. But every time he blamed someone below him, Vincent quietly asked one more question, and one more, and slowly the truth bled out from between Ryan's careful lies. The good employees kept leaving. The best ones lasted a few months and then quit. The reviews praised the service and never the management. Customers came back for specific staff members, and when those staff members left, the customers left with them. The lounge was not failing because the workers were bad. It was failing because the leadership was destroying the very people who made it worth coming to. Every kind, talented, hard-working person Ryan drove out of that building took a little piece of the lounge's soul with them. And Olivia Carter, the young woman he had tried to drag into a storage room tonight, was the last real reason anyone still came through the door. Vincent understood something that night that most powerful men spend their whole lives failing to understand. A business is not a building, and it is not a brand, and it is not a line on a spreadsheet. A business is people, and no amount of money or marketing can save a place that treats its best people like they are disposable. He had inherited a great deal of hard knowledge from his family, most of it ugly, but this one truth he had earned himself, and it had cost him more than he ever told anyone. When he finally walked back out onto the floor, the lounge had mostly emptied. The rain was still coming down outside, and Olivia was there, wiping down the marble bar with slow, careful strokes, the way you do a familiar task when your hands need something to do while your mind is somewhere else entirely. She looked up when she heard him, and she went still, and he saw the wariness in her eyes, and it did not offend him. It told him she was smart. A woman who had been through what she had been through and still trusted powerful men would have been a fool, and Vincent had no use for fools. "You didn't fire him," she said. It was not a question. There was an edge in it. "No," Vincent said. "Not yet." "Why not? You saw what he did." "I did." "Then why is he still here?" Vincent came closer and rested one hand on the back of a chair, and he studied her face in the low light, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet and honest in a way that surprised her. "Because firing him tonight would have felt good, and things that feel good and things that are right are not always the same thing. I need to understand exactly what he's done, all of it, before I decide what happens to him. If I move too fast, I lose the chance to fix everything that's broken here. And a lot is broken here, Miss Carter, isn't it?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded, slowly. She had not expected that answer. She had expected a threat or a favor, or one of those speeches powerful men gave when they wanted you to be grateful. She had not expected honesty, and honesty from a man like this unsettled her more than any threat could have. "You know my name," she said. "I've known it since about 9 o'clock tonight," Vincent said. "I've been watching you work. You're very good at this, better than anyone else on this floor, and I suspect you've always been the reason this place stays afloat, and I suspect no one has ever once told you so." Olivia set down the cloth. Her hands were shaking now, though she could not have said whether it was from the aftermath of Ryan or from the shock of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in longer than she could remember. "What do you want from me?" she said, and she braced for the answer. And Vincent Moretti, the most feared name in Chicago, looked at this exhausted, frightened, unbreakable young woman across the ruins of an empty lounge and gave her an answer that would change the course of both their lives. "I want to offer you a job," he said, "a real one. I'm developing a new hospitality project across the city, and I need someone to help build it from the ground up, not to serve drinks, to lead, to hire the right people and treat them the way you clearly wish you'd been treated. I've watched you all night, and I think you already know how to do this better than any consultant I could hire. I'm not offering you charity, and I'm not offering you sympathy, because I can see you'd throw both back in my face. I'm offering you an opportunity. The question is whether you're brave enough to take it." The rain fell. The empty glasses caught the light, and Olivia Carter stood at the marble bar where she had spent 3 years being underestimated, staring at a door that had suddenly, impossibly opened in front of her, and every wound she had ever carried told her not to walk through it, and something newer and quieter and stronger told her that she had already spent too much of her life standing still. "Why me?" she whispered. "You don't even know me. I know enough, Vincent said. I know you stood in the middle of a room full of people who wouldn't help you, and you refused to move. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I've spent my whole life around powerful people, and almost none of them would have done what you did tonight with nothing to protect them. So I'll ask you again, and then I'll leave you to think. Are you brave enough to take it? And Olivia, who had spent her whole life believing that people like Vincent Moretti lived in a world she could never enter, felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She did not know that this man had scars of his own, buried deeper than hers. She did not know the weight of the name he carried, or the war he was quietly fighting to become someone different from everyone who had come before him. She did not know that in choosing her, he had just made an enemy of the man in the back office, and that Ryan Caldwell was already, even now, beginning to plan a revenge that would one day threaten to burn both their lives to the ground. All she knew, standing there in the quiet, was that for the first time in 3 years, someone had looked at her and seen not a barmaid, not a weakness, not a thing to be used, but a person with something the whole world had somehow missed. She looked at Vincent Moretti for a long time, and then, very slowly, she nodded. The first week, Olivia woke up every morning certain she had made a terrible mistake. She would open her eyes in the small apartment she shared with nobody, stare at the ceiling, and run through the whole thing again. A man she did not know, a name that made grown men lower their voices, a job that had appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the worst night of her life, offered by the one person in Chicago she had the most reason to fear, and she had said yes. She had actually said yes. "You're out of your mind," her friend Dana told her over the phone the night before Olivia was supposed to start. "You know who that family is. You know what they do." "Did," Olivia said. "What they did." "You don't know that. You don't know anything about him except that he's rich and scary and he wants you working for him." "Olivia, sweetheart, listen to me. Men like that don't hand out opportunities. They hand out debts, and one day they come to collect." Olivia had lain awake most of that night, turning Dana's words over. Because Dana was not wrong. That was the terrible part. Everything Olivia had ever learned about powerful men said that Dana was right. And yet, there had been that question. "Are you hurt?" 2 words that no one with power over her had ever bothered to ask. She could not make those 2 words fit the story Dana was telling. She could not make them fit any story except the one she was afraid to believe, which was that maybe, just maybe, this man was different. So she went. The address Vincent had given her was not a restaurant. It was a building, half-finished, a gutted old bank on the edge of downtown, with scaffolding up the front and plastic sheeting over the windows. When Olivia walked in, she found him standing in the middle of the raw concrete floor in a suit that cost more than she made in 3 months, talking to a foreman. And when he saw her, he stopped mid-sentence and turned like she was the only thing in the room worth looking at. "You came," he said. "You sound surprised." "I am a little. I gave you every chance to run. Most people would have." "I'm not most people," Olivia said, and she watched something move across his face that might have been a smile if he ever let himself finish one. "No," Vincent said. "You're not. That's the whole point." He walked her through the building, and this was the first thing that cracked the wall Olivia had built around herself, because he did not talk to her the way a boss talks to an employee. He asked her questions, real ones. Where should the bar go and why? What made a person feel welcome the second they walked through a door, and what made them feel like they were being processed? How did you train a young server to care about a stranger's night without burning out and losing themselves? And every time she answered, he listened, actually listened, his head tilted slightly, filing her words away like they mattered. "Most people who own places like this," she said finally, stopping in the middle of the empty floor, "they don't ask the staff anything. They tell." "Most people who own places like this," Vincent said, "are losing money and can't figure out why. I've watched 100 smart men run businesses into the ground because they were too proud to ask the person carrying the plates what was actually wrong. I'm not going to make that mistake, which is why I need you." 2 minutes into that answer, Olivia felt the ground shift under her a second time, because he had said it plainly, without flattery, as a simple fact. "I need you, not I'm doing you a favor, not you should be grateful. I need you." and she realized she had never once in her working life heard those words from someone who signed her paycheck. That was the first week. By the second week, Olivia had learned that the stories about Vincent Moretti were both completely true and completely wrong. They were true in that the power was real. She saw it. She saw the way people spoke to him carefully, like they were handling something that might go off. She saw contractors who were 3 weeks behind suddenly finish in 4 days after a single phone call she was not allowed to hear. She saw a city inspector who had been dragging his feet on permits arrive personally, hat in hand, apologizing. The power was not a rumor. The power was a fact, and it moved the world around Vincent the way a current moves water. But the stories were wrong about what he did with it. She found the first piece of it by accident. A young man on the construction crew, barely 19, fell from the scaffolding and shattered his wrist. Olivia was there when it happened, and she rode with him in the ambulance because nobody else would. And in the hospital waiting room, she overheard the boy's mother, a small, tired woman who spoke very little English, weeping to a nurse that she did not know how they would pay for any of it. The family had no insurance. The father had left years ago. This boy's paycheck was the whole reason the lights stayed on. Olivia went back to the site, sick to her stomach, ready to fight Vincent about it, ready to tell him that a man who could summon city inspectors could surely find a way to help a broken boy. She rehearsed the speech in her head the whole way, and when she found him and started in on it, he simply looked at her, confused, and said, "The hospital bill's already covered. The mother's rent is covered for 6 months. The boy's on full pay until the wrist heals, and there's a job waiting when he's ready. I made those calls an hour ago. Why are you upset?" Olivia stood there with her whole speech dying in her throat. "You already?" she started. "You didn't tell anyone." "Why would I tell anyone?" "Because people would think better of you." Vincent looked at her for a long moment, and something in his face closed like a door. "I don't do it so people will think better of me," he said quietly. "I do it because a boy fell off my scaffolding, and it's my scaffolding. If I needed people to clap, I'd be no better than the man who tried to drag you into a storage room to protect his little kingdom. You do a good thing because it's good. The second you need an audience for it, it stops being good and starts being a performance." He turned back to the plans on the table. "Go home, Olivia. It's late." She did not go home. She stood there and she watched him work, and she felt the wall around her heart crack a little further, and it frightened her because she had built that wall for good reasons. By the third week, she had stopped counting the reasons. There was the day she found him alone in the half-finished space long after everyone had gone, sitting on an overturned bucket, going through the personnel files of every single person who would work in the building, not skimming, reading. He knew the name of the man who would run the kitchen and the name of the man's wife, and the fact that the man had a daughter starting college in the fall. He knew that one of the dishwashers Olivia had hired was a recovering addict 18 months clean. And instead of using it as a reason to reject him, Vincent had quietly arranged that the man's schedule would never conflict with his recovery meetings. "How do you remember all this?" Olivia asked, sitting down on a bucket across from him. "My father remembered everything about his enemies," Vincent said without looking up. "Every weakness, every debt, every fear. He used to say the man who knows the most about you owns you." He turned a page. "I decided a long time ago I'd remember everything too, just for the opposite reason. I want to know what my people need so I can give it to them before they have to ask. My father used knowledge to trap people. I'm trying to use it to set them free." He finally looked up, and there was something raw in his eyes, something he did not usually let show. "It's the same skill, Olivia. That's the part nobody understands. It's the exact same skill. The only thing that changes is what you pointed at." That was the night Olivia understood that she was working for a man at war with himself. And that understanding was the twist that changed everything. Because up until that moment, she had been trying to figure out whether Vincent Moretti was a good man or a bad man. And the answer, she finally saw, was that he was neither and both. He was a man who had been handed a terrible inheritance and was fighting, alone, every single day, to become something his blood said he could never be. He was not good the way a man is good, who was raised gently and never tempted. He was good the way a man is good who has to choose it, over and over, against everything in him and everything behind him. And that, Olivia realized, was a harder and rarer and more painful kind of good than she had ever imagined. She started to look at him differently after that, and he noticed. "You're staring," he said one afternoon, not unkindly. "I'm trying to figure you out." "How's it going?" "Badly," Olivia admitted, and for the first time she saw him laugh, a real laugh, surprised out of him, and it changed his whole face, and she thought, "Oh," and did not let herself finish the thought. The new place opened in the fall, and it was Olivia's, in every way that mattered. Vincent had given her the money and the power, and then, astonishingly, had stepped back and let her use them. She hired the staff, she trained them, she built the culture from nothing, from the ground up, the way she had always dreamed a place could be run if only someone would let her. She hired the girls who had quit the Black Rose rather than work under Ryan, tracked them down one by one, and offered them real jobs with real respect, and watched them come back to life. She built a place where a server could report a problem and know it would be taken seriously, where talent mattered more than who you knew, where a 23-year-old barmaid with nothing but genuine kindness could walk in the door and be seen. And the place worked. God, it worked. Within 2 months, it was the hardest reservation in the city. Within 3, the same important customers who had once praised Olivia at the Black Rose were coming to her new place instead, and telling everyone they knew, and the numbers Vincent watched so carefully were climbing in a way the old lounge had never managed in its best year. "You did this," Vincent told her one night, both of them standing at the back of the full dining room, watching it hum. "We did this." "No," he said. "I wrote checks. Anyone can write a check. You built something people love. Those are not the same thing, and I need you to understand the difference, because you've spent your whole life letting people convince you that what you do is small." He turned to look at her. "It isn't small, Olivia. It's the whole thing. It's the only thing that was ever real about any of this." 10 weeks into the success, on a Tuesday night that started like any other, the past walked back through the door. Olivia was at the host stand when she saw him, and her whole body went cold before her mind even caught up. Ryan Caldwell, standing in the entrance of her restaurant, in a suit a little too shiny, with a smile she knew far too well. He looked older, thinner. There was something desperate underneath the polish now, something she had not seen on him before, and it made him more dangerous, not less. The way a cornered animal is more dangerous than a comfortable one. "Well," Ryan said, looking around at the beautiful full room, at the staff who moved with confidence, at everything Olivia had built. "Look at all this. Look at how far the little barmaid has come." "You need to leave," Olivia said. Her voice was steady, but her heart was slamming. "Is that any way to talk to an old colleague? I just came to congratulate you, and to see it for myself." His eyes moved over the room, and there was calculation in them, the same calculation she remembered, the same trick of looking at people's kindness and seeing only weapons. "You know, I lost my job after that night. Did you know that? Your friend Moretti made sure of it. Not right away. He's too smart for that. He did it slow, quiet. A word here, a phone call there. By the time I understood what was happening, no one in this city would hire me. Do you have any idea what that's like? To be erased? You did that to yourself, did I?" Ryan stepped closer and dropped his voice, and the smile stayed, but his eyes went flat and hard. "Let me tell you something, sweetheart. I've had a lot of time on my hands these past months. A lot of time to look into things, to ask questions, to find out exactly who Vincent Moretti is, and where his money really comes from, and what his family really did in this city." He let that sit. "I know things now, Olivia. Things that would end him. Things that would put your beautiful new career in the ground right next to him. So before you tell me to leave again, you might want to think very carefully about how you treat me." The floor seemed to tilt under Olivia's feet. 2 minutes ago, she had been running a perfect night. Now the whole thing hung by a thread, and the thread was in Ryan Caldwell's hand. "What do you want?" she said. "There she is," Ryan said softly. "There's the smart girl. What do I want? That's the right question." He glanced around the room once more. "For now, I want you to remember that I exist. I want you to remember every time you're standing here feeling proud of yourself that I can take it all away with one conversation and the right reporter. And when I decide what I want from you, and I will, you're going to give it to me because you have too much to lose now, don't you? That's the thing about building something. It gives your enemies a place to aim. Be Mikala. He turned to go and then stopped and looked back over his shoulder and delivered the line he had clearly saved. By the way, does your boss know you've started to look at him the way you do? Because I saw it just now watching you two across the room. You've fallen for him, the Mafia boss. How's that going to look, Olivia, when it all comes out? The Moretti crime family and his sweet little girlfriend who used to sling drinks. He smiled. Sleep well. And then he was gone, out the door, into the night, leaving Olivia standing at the host stand with her hands shaking and her whole beautiful world suddenly balanced on the edge of a knife. She did not tell Vincent that night. She told herself it was because she needed time to think, but the truth was uglier, and she knew it. She did not tell him because Ryan had said the one thing that was true. She had fallen for him. Somewhere in the past 3 months, watching this impossible man fight his own blood to become someone better, she had fallen, quietly and completely, and she had not admitted it even to herself until Ryan Caldwell said it out loud in the middle of her restaurant. And now she could not look at Vincent without feeling exposed, without feeling that her own heart was one more weapon someone could use against them both. She lasted 4 days. On the 4th day, Vincent found her alone in the back office after closing, and he did not ask her what was wrong. He simply sat down across from her and waited, the way he waited for contractors and inspectors and everyone else, with a patience that eventually pulled the truth out of people, because it was clear he would sit there all night. Ryan came in, she said finally. Vincent went very still. When? 4 days ago. 4 days. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes, and then he mastered it, and when he spoke, his voice was controlled. Tell me exactly what he said, all of it. Don't leave anything out to protect me. So she told him. She told him about the threats, about the reporter, about the things Ryan claimed to know. And Vincent listened without moving, and his face gave nothing away, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long time. He's not bluffing, Vincent said at last, about knowing things. My family's history is real, Olivia. It's ugly and it's real, and I've spent years and a great deal of money trying to bury it deep enough that it can't reach the people I care about. But nothing stays buried forever. If Ryan's been digging, he's found some of it. Maybe a lot of it. He leaned back. The question is what he intends to do with it. He said he'd take everything from us, from you, from me, from this. She gestured at the restaurant, at the things she had built, at the first real home she had ever made for herself. Vincent, I can't lose this. I've never had anything, and now I have this, and I can't. You won't, Vincent said. You don't know that. No, he admitted. I don't. But I know something else. He leaned forward, and now there was something in his eyes she had not seen before. Something old and cold that reached back into the blood he was always fighting. I know exactly how my father would have handled a man like Ryan Caldwell. I know it the way I know how to breathe. There would be one phone call, and by tomorrow morning, Ryan Caldwell would simply cease to be a problem, permanently, and no one would ever ask a single question, because that's how it worked. That's how it always worked. That's the world I come from. He said it flatly, without drama, and that was what made it terrifying. I could make him disappear, Olivia. Tonight. Right now. And part of me, the part I hate, the part I've been fighting my whole life, is telling me that it would be so easy and so clean, and that everyone I care about would be safe. The room was very quiet. And that terrifies me, Vincent went on, softer now, more than anything Ryan could ever do to me. Because for 3 months, I've told myself I've changed, that I'm not that I built all of this and hired all these people and rebuilt a broken boy's family because I'm different from every Moretti who came before me. And then a man threatens the thing I love, and I find out that the old way is still right there, still in my hand, still the first thing I reach for when I'm afraid. He looked at her. So here's the truth, and I need you to hear it, because you deserve to know exactly who you're standing next to. I don't know what I'm going to do about Ryan Caldwell, and I'm frightened of what I'm capable of." Olivia stared at him, and in that moment 2 things became clear to her at once, and they arrived so close together that she could not tell which one hit harder. The first was that she had been wrong all those weeks to think of Vincent as a man who had simply chosen to be good. He had not simply chosen it. He was choosing it right now in front of her, and it was costing him, and the outcome was not certain. The war she had glimpsed weeks ago was not won. It was being fought this very second, in this very room, and she was the reason it had gotten so hard. And the second thing, the thing that made her chest ache, was that he had said the thing I love. He had not said business. He had not said restaurant. He had said the thing I love, and he had been looking at her when the word love left his mouth, and she did not think he had even noticed doing it. "Vincent," she said carefully, "look at me." He looked. "The reason I respect you," she said, and her voice was steadier than she felt, "is not that you're powerful. I've known powerful men. Powerful men are the ones who tried to break me my whole life. Ryan is powerful, in his own small way. Power isn't rare. Power is everywhere, and most of the people who have it use it to hurt whoever's smaller than them." She reached across the desk, and after a moment she put her hand over his, and she felt him go still. "The reason I respect you is that you have all of it. More than any of them, and you keep choosing not to use it that way. That boy on the scaffolding, the girls I hired back who Ryan drove out, the dishwasher and his meetings. You could have ignored every single one of them and no one would have blamed you. And you didn't. So don't tell me you're afraid you're still that man, because I've watched you for 3 months not be that man 100 times when no one was watching and no one would ever know." Vincent's jaw worked. He looked down at her hand over his. "If you make Ryan disappear tonight," Olivia said very gently, "then you save this. You save me, you save the restaurant, you save yourself. And you lose the only thing that ever made you different from your father. And I promise you, Vincent, I would rather lose everything we built, all of it, every table and every dollar, than watch you become the thing you've spent your whole life running from, because I didn't fall in love with the Mafia boss." The word was out before she could stop it, and she watched it land, watched his eyes come up to hers. "I fell in love with the man who's trying so hard not to be one. Don't take him away from me, not even to protect me, especially not to protect me." For a long moment, neither of them moved. "You said it," Vincent said quietly. "Said what?" "Fell in love." Olivia felt the heat climb up her neck, but she did not take it back, and she did not look away, because she had spent her whole life being small and unheard, and she was done with that. She had been done with that since the night she planted her feet on the floor and told Ryan Caldwell no. "Yes," she said, "I did, and I meant it. And now you know, and you can do whatever you want with it, but I'm not going to pretend anymore. I've done enough pretending to survive. I don't want to survive anymore, Vincent. I want to live. And I want to live it here, with what we built, with you, as the man you actually are, and not the one you're afraid you might be." Vincent turned his hand over under hers so that their palms met, and he held her hand, and for a man who could summon inspectors and finish jobs in 4 days and make problems disappear with a phone call, his hand was not entirely steady. "Then I'm not going to make the call," he said. "I want you to understand what that means. It means the hard way. It means Ryan keeps whatever he's found, and we deal with him like people, in the daylight with lawyers and evidence and the slow grinding machinery of doing things right, and it might not work, and we might lose. The clean way would work. The clean way always works. That's what makes it so dangerous. But I'm not going to do it, and the only reason in the world is that you asked me not to." He let out a breath. "My father would have called me a fool. He'd have said I chose a woman's feelings over my family's safety, and that it would get us both killed." "Your father," Olivia said, "is exactly who you're not." Something broke open in Vincent's face then. Some grief he had been carrying so long he had forgotten it was there. And for just a second, Olivia saw all the way down to the boy he must have been. The boy handed a name like a loaded gun and told it was his whole future. And she understood, finally and completely, why he had watched her for 2 hours in the corner of that lounge. He had not been looking at a barmaid. He had been looking for proof. Proof that a person could be kind in a hard world and survive it. Proof that goodness was not just a weakness to be exploited. She had been, without knowing it, the evidence he had been searching for his whole life, that the war inside him was worth fighting. "There's something you should know," Vincent said, and his voice had changed, gone lower, and Olivia felt the ground shift again, the way it always did with him, the way it always did right before the floor gave out. "About why I was really at the Black Rose that night. I've let you believe it was chance. It wasn't entirely chance." Olivia's hand tightened on his. "What do you mean?" "I told you I bought the lounge to check on my investment. That's true, but it's not the whole truth." He looked at her steadily, deciding something, and then he decided it. "One of the girls who quit, one of the ones Ryan drove out, the ones you hired back. Her name is Sophia." "Sophia? Yes. She works Thursdays now. She's wonderful. What about her?" "Sophia is my cousin," Vincent said. The words hit Olivia like cold water. "She didn't know who I was. Not really. We're not close. The family scattered years ago, and I've kept my distance from all of it on purpose. But she knew enough to reach out once when things got bad. She sent me a message. She told me there was a supervisor at a lounge I'd just quietly invested in who was destroying people, who had made her quit, who had made 2 other girls quit. And she told me there was one girl left who was holding the whole place together, taking all of it on herself, standing between Ryan and everyone weaker than her, and that this girl was going to break soon too, and no one was going to help her because no one ever helped anyone in that place." Vincent's grip tightened. "She told me the girl's name was Olivia Carter, and she asked me, since I owned the building now, if I could please do something before it was too late." Olivia could not breathe. "So I went," Vincent said. "I sat in the corner, and I was going to watch for an hour and quietly fire Ryan the next day through a manager and never get involved, because getting involved is exactly what a Moretti is supposed to never do." His eyes held hers. "And then I watched you for 2 hours. And I saw everything Sophia said was true, and more than she said. And then I watched Ryan put his hand on you, and I watched a room full of people do nothing, and I heard you say no when you had absolutely no reason to believe anyone would back you up." He shook his head slowly. "I didn't stand up that night to protect my investment, Olivia. I stood up because in 20 years of walking away from things that weren't my business, you were the first person I couldn't walk away from. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. It ruined every rule I'd made for myself, and I'd do it again 1,000 times." The office was silent. Somewhere out in the dark restaurant, a chair settled. The heating clicked on, and Olivia Carter, who had walked into the Black Rose Lounge 3 months ago believing she was invisible, sat holding the hand of the most feared man in Chicago and understood that she had never once been invisible at all. Someone had seen her. Someone had asked for help on her behalf when she did not even know it. A chain of small human decencies, one girl reaching out for another, had reached all the way up into the darkest corner of the city and pulled a dangerous man out into the light. "Sophia never told me," Olivia whispered. "I asked her not to. I didn't want you to feel you owed anyone anything. You didn't take this job because of a favor. You took it because you earned it, and I need you to keep believing that, because it's true." Olivia laughed, wetly, and wiped her eyes with the back of her free hand. The whole time I've been trying to figure out if I could trust you, and you'd already, before you even knew me, you'd already—" "Yes," Vincent said simply, and then the moment, which was the tenderest moment of Olivia's entire life, was shattered by the buzz of Vincent's phone against the desk. He glanced at it, and Olivia watched his face change, watched the softness drain out of it, and something hard and cold and ready take its place, and she knew, before he said a word, that the war they had just been talking about had stopped being a conversation and become real. "What is it?" she said. Vincent set the phone down slowly. When he looked up, his eyes had gone flat, the way they had gone flat the night he told Ryan to take his hand off her. "It's Ryan," he said. "He's not waiting anymore. He's called a meeting, tomorrow night. The investors, the press, a room full of the most important people in this city, all invited to a private event at the old Black Rose. My old Black Rose." Vincent's jaw tightened. He's going to stand up in front of all of them, with you and me both in the room, and he's going to tell them everything he's found about my family. He's going to burn it all down in public, where I can't touch it, in front of the exact people whose opinion decides whether anything I've built survives." He stood slowly, and the man who rose from that chair was not the gentle boss who read personnel files on an overturned bucket. It was something older and harder that had been sleeping in his blood his whole life. "He's forcing my hand, Olivia. He knows I won't hurt him with witnesses everywhere. He's made himself untouchable and dangerous at the same time. It's smart. God help me, it's genuinely smart." Olivia stood too, her heart pounding. Everything she had built and everything she had just confessed hanging in the balance. "Then what do we do?" she said. And Vincent Moretti looked at the woman he loved in the restaurant she had built out of nothing but kindness on the night before a man walked into a crowded room to destroy them both. And for the first time since she had known him, he did not have an answer. Neither of them slept that night. Vincent stayed at the restaurant until nearly 4 a.m. on the phone in the back office, and Olivia sat on the other side of the desk and listened to a side of him she had never heard. Not the tender man who read personnel files, not the man who covered a broken boy's hospital bill in silence. This was the third Vincent, the one the whole city was afraid of, the one who made calls at 3 a.m. and got answers. And it frightened her a little to see how easily he could become that man when he needed to. "I want everything he's touched in the last 6 months," Vincent said into the phone. "Every reporter he's contacted, every meeting he's taken, who's funding him because a man who can't get hired in this city doesn't rent out a private room at the Black Rose on his own money. Someone's behind him. Find out who." He listened. "I don't care what time it is. Find out who." When he finally hung up, Olivia asked the question that had been sitting in her chest for hours. "You said someone's funding him. You really think Ryan isn't doing this alone?" "Ryan Caldwell is a small man with a big grudge," Vincent said. "Small men with grudges are easy to use. Somebody found him at the bottom, gave him money and a purpose, and pointed him at me. He thinks he's getting revenge. He doesn't understand he's a weapon in somebody else's hand." Vincent rubbed his eyes, and for a moment he just looked tired. The question is whose hand? And why now? And what they actually want, because it isn't Ryan's little wounded pride. Nobody spends real money on that. 2 hours later, just after dawn, the answer came. Vincent's phone lit up, and he read the message, and Olivia watched his whole body go still in a way she was learning to dread. She had seen him go still like that twice now, and both times the floor had dropped out afterward. "What is it?" she said. Vincent set the phone down very carefully, the way you set down something you're afraid you might throw. "The man funding Ryan," he said, "is my uncle." The words did not mean anything to Olivia at first. "Your uncle, Salvatore Moretti, my father's younger brother." Vincent's voice had gone flat and strange. "The last living member of the family who still runs things the old way, the one I've spent 10 years pulling away from. When my father died, Salvatore expected me to take my father's place, to inherit the whole operation, the real operation, the one underneath the businesses. And I said no. I took the clean money, the buildings, the legitimate holdings, and I walked away from the rest of it. And I told him I was done, that the family was going to end with me." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't tell Salvatore Moretti no. I did it anyway, and he's been waiting all these years for me to fail, so he could say I told you so and pull me back in. And now he's decided he's done waiting. He's going to make me fail." Olivia's mind was racing. So Ryan isn't really about Ryan at all. Ryan's the match. Salvatore's the one holding it. Tonight, when Ryan stands up in front of the investors and burns my reputation to the ground, he'll think he's getting revenge on the man who ruined his career. But what's really going to happen is that everything I built on my own, clean, without the family, is going to collapse. And when it collapses, there'll only be one place left for me to go for help. Back to my uncle. Back into the old life. On his terms. Vincent's jaw tightened. "That's the plan, Olivia. That's the whole plan. He's not trying to destroy me. He's trying to make me desperate enough to come home." Olivia sat with that, and the cruelty of it took her breath away. It was so much worse than a simple threat. It was a trap built out of a man's own success, designed so that the harder Vincent had worked to become good, the more he had to lose, and the more he lost, the more he'd need the very thing he'd been running from. He knows you, she said quietly. He built this so your own life becomes the weapon against you. That's what family does when family is like mine, Vincent said. They study you. My father taught me that himself, remember? The man who knows the most about you owns you. Salvatore knows everything about me. He knows I won't kill Ryan because he knows I've changed, and he's counting on it. He's using my own goodness against me. If I were still the man he wanted me to be, this wouldn't work. The old me would have made Ryan disappear a week ago, and Salvatore would have nothing. Vincent looked at her, and something raw moved in his eyes. The thing I've been fighting my whole life to become is the exact thing that's about to sink me. Do you understand what that does to a person? To find out that being good is the reason you're going to lose? And there it was, the deepest twist of all, the one that had been coiled underneath the whole story from the beginning. Vincent's uncle had not simply attacked him. He had turned Vincent's redemption itself into the trap. Every good choice Vincent had made, every mercy, every act of restraint, had been quietly building the very structure that was about to fall on him, and the only escape the old man had left open was the door marked, "Come home." Olivia stood up. She came around the desk, and she took Vincent's face in both her hands, which she had never done before, and made him look at her. "Then we don't play his game," she said. "Olivia, no, listen to me. He built a trap where every good thing you do makes it worse. Fine, so we stop thinking like him. He's counting on you to either become a monster or become desperate. What if you do neither? What if you win the exact way he thinks is impossible? Clean, in the daylight, the good way, and you make it work?" "The good way doesn't work against people like Salvatore. That's the whole point. That's why he's like that. He learned a long time ago that the ruthless win." "Then let's be the first ones to prove him wrong," Olivia said, "because I'd rather lose fighting your way than win his. And so would you. That's the only reason he's had to build something this complicated. If you were easy to corrupt, he'd have done it already." Vincent looked at her for a long time, and she watched the exhaustion and the fear and the old darkness war across his face, and then, slowly, something else rose up underneath all of it. Not the cold thing, something warmer and harder at the same time. Resolve. "You know what the maddening thing is," he said quietly. "What?" "You've been running my company for 3 months. You built the most successful restaurant in the city from an empty bank building, and you still don't understand that the reason I'm even considering fighting a man like Salvatore the clean way is that I watched you do the impossible with nothing but kindness, and it worked." He put his hand over hers, still cupped against his face. "You're the evidence, Olivia. You've always been the evidence that the good way can win. So all right. We do it your way. God help us both." They had 11 hours until Ryan stood up in that room. They spent every one of them working. Vincent made calls, but different calls now. Not the 3 a.m. calls to dangerous men, but calls to lawyers and to a forensic accountant and to a woman named Diane, who Olivia learned had been quietly investigating financial crimes in the city for 2 decades. Because here was the thing Salvatore's clever trap had missed. It assumed Vincent's only 2 options were violence or surrender. It never accounted for a third thing, the slow, unglamorous, entirely legal power of the truth, gathered carefully and deployed at exactly the right moment. "Ryan spent months digging into my family," Vincent told Olivia, somewhere around noon, spreading papers across the desk. "But he was so busy digging into me that he never once thought about protecting himself. And Ryan Caldwell has a great deal to hide. The financial manipulation at the Black Rose, the money that went missing under his management, the invoices that never matched. I had all of it the night I investigated him back at the beginning. I just never used it, because I'd decided to handle him quietly. Salvatore's counting on my mercy. He's not counting on the fact that I already have enough on Ryan to send him to prison, and that I've been sitting on it for 3 months. Olivia stared at the papers. "You've had this the whole time. Since the first week. I told you. I remember everything. My father's skill, pointed the other way." He almost smiled. "I kept it because I believe people can change, and I wanted to give Ryan the chance to walk away clean and rebuild his life. He chose not to. He chose this. So now the mercy's over, and the mercy being over is still not the same as violence. That's the part Salvatore can't imagine. There's a whole enormous space between forgiveness and murder, and my uncle's never once set foot in it because it requires patience, and patience is the one thing his kind of power never needed. But there was a problem, and Olivia saw it before Vincent said it. "If you expose Ryan tonight," she said slowly, "you stop him. But you don't stop Salvatore. Ryan goes down, and your uncle just finds another match. And now he knows you'll fight clean, so next time he'll build the trap tighter. You win tonight, and you still lose the war." Vincent looked at her with something like pride. "That's exactly right. That's exactly the trap. Beating Ryan is easy. Beating Salvatore is the thing that can't be done, because he never puts his own name on anything. He's untouchable. There's no evidence that connects him to any of it. That's how he's survived 30 years while everyone around him went to prison or worse. Then how do we— "We don't beat Salvatore tonight," Vincent said. "We can't. What we do tonight is refuse to give him what he wants. He wants me broken and desperate and crawling back. So instead, tonight, in front of everyone, I stay standing. I expose Ryan, I keep my reputation, I keep the business, and I keep my hands clean. And Salvatore watches all of it, and he understands that his best weapon just failed, and that I did it his impossible way, the clean way, and that I'm not coming home. It doesn't destroy him. Nothing destroys him. But it tells him the truth, that I'm done, that there's nothing he can dangle in front of me anymore, because everything he thinks I need, I've already built without him." Vincent's voice dropped. "The only way to win against a man like my uncle isn't to beat him. It's to stop needing anything he has. Then he has no hold on you at all." Two twists inside of one, and Olivia felt the whole architecture of it click into place. It was not a plan to win. It was a plan to become unbeatable, which was something else entirely, and something Salvatore, whose whole life ran on other people's needs and fears, would never see coming. But Salvatore had one more move, and it came at 4 p.m, 7 hours before the event, and it was aimed not at Vincent, but at the one soft place Vincent had left exposed. It was aimed at Olivia. Her phone rang with a number she didn't know. She almost didn't answer. She wished later that she hadn't. "Miss Carter?" The voice was old and cultured and warm in a way that made her skin crawl precisely because it was so pleasant. "You don't know me. My name is Salvatore Moretti. I believe you've become acquainted with my nephew." Olivia's blood went cold. She looked across the office at Vincent, who was on another call, his back to her, and she did not know why, but she stepped into the hallway and lowered her voice. "What do you want?" she said. "Directness. I appreciate that. Vincent chose well, I'll give him that. He always did have an eye for quality." A pause. "I'm calling to offer you something, my dear. A kindness, really. You seem like an intelligent young woman who's found herself standing very close to something that's about to explode. I'd like to offer you the chance to step away before it does." "I'm not stepping away from anything." "Let me finish. Tonight, my nephew is going to lose. I've arranged it very carefully, and I promise you whatever he's told you about his clever plans, it ends the same way. He loses the business. He loses his reputation. And a young woman who tied her entire future to him, a woman with no money of her own, no family backing, nothing but a job that's about to vanish, that young woman loses everything, too." The warmth never left his voice. "Unless she's smart. I can make sure you land safely, Olivia. A new position, a generous one, somewhere far from the wreckage. All you have to do is not be in that room tonight, get sick, have a family emergency. Simply don't show up. And whatever happens to Vincent, you'll be taken care of. You'll be fine." Olivia stood in the hallway with the phone against her ear and understood with perfect clarity that this was the real trap. Not Ryan, not the reporters. This quiet, warm, reasonable voice offering her a life raft while the ship went down. Because Salvatore had studied her too. He knew she had grown up with nothing. He knew that having nothing does something to a person, plants a fear so deep it never fully goes away, the fear of ending up back there, of losing the little you've clawed together. He was not threatening her. He was offering her safety. And he knew that for someone who had never once in her life been safe, safety was the most dangerous offer in the world. "You've thought about this," she said quietly. I think about everything, my dear. It's why I've lasted so long. You want me out of that room because you know that if I'm there, Vincent fights harder. You know I'm the reason he's choosing the clean way. Take me out and maybe he cracks. Maybe he gets desperate. Maybe he becomes exactly what you need him to be. She was speaking almost to herself now, working it out. That's it, isn't it? I'm not a bystander to you. I'm the thing keeping him good, and you can't stand that. There was a long silence on the line. You're cleverer than I expected, Salvatore said at last, and the warmth had cooled just slightly. Which means you understand your situation exactly. You are the only thing standing between my nephew and where he belongs. I've offered you the kind way out. I'd advise you to take it, because the people who stand between me and what I want do not historically fare well. And there it was, under the velvet, the blade. Olivia should have been terrified. Part of her was. But underneath the fear, something else was rising, something she recognized, because she had felt it once before, on a rainy Tuesday night, with Ryan's hand crushing her wrist and 40 people watching her get dragged into the dark. It was the thing that had made her plant her feet, the thing that had made her say no when no one was going to help her. Mr. Moretti, she said, and her voice did not shake. I grew up with nothing. Do you understand what that means? It means I already know how to lose everything. I've done it. I survived it. You're trying to scare me with the one thing I'm not afraid of, because I've already been to the bottom, and I climbed out, and I'm still here. She took a breath. You think having nothing to lose makes me weak. It's the opposite. It makes me the one person you can't buy and can't scare, because you're offering me back the exact thing I already lived through and beat. So no, I'll be in that room tonight, front row. And I'm going to watch your nephew win the clean way, and I'm going to watch you realize there's nothing left of yours he needs. Have a good evening. She hung up before he could answer, and stood in the hallway with her heart slamming against her ribs, and realized her hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the phone. When she walked back into the office, Vincent had finished his call, and he took one look at her face and crossed the room in 3 steps. What happened? Olivia, what happened? Who was that? She told him, all of it, and she watched his face go through fury and fear and something that looked at the end almost like awe. He called you, Vincent said. He went around me and called you directly. He offered you a way out and you told him no. He said it like he couldn't quite believe it. Olivia, people spend their whole lives doing whatever that man tells them. Governors, judges, men with armies of lawyers. And you told him to have a good evening and hung up. I told you, she said, and she was crying now, from the adrenaline, from the fear she'd held back through the whole call. I already know how to lose everything. He can't threaten me with it. It's the only advantage I've ever had. Vincent pulled her in and held her, and for a moment neither of them said anything. 2 people who had come from opposite ends of everything and somehow ended up standing in the same fire. He's going to come after you, Vincent said into her hair. Not tonight. Tonight he'll lose and he'll retreat, because he always retreats when a plan fails. He never overcommits. But he doesn't forget. Someday, when I'm not looking, he'll come after you, because you're the one thing that beat him, and men like Salvatore can't live with that. Then we'll deal with it someday, Olivia said, together, the clean way, like everything else. Vincent pulled back and looked at her, and there was a decision forming in his eyes. One she couldn't read yet. There's one more thing I have to do before tonight, he said, and you're not going to like it. What? I have to give Ryan a choice. Olivia stared at him. A choice. Vincent, he's about to destroy you in front of the whole city. He's working for the man who just threatened to ruin my life. What choice could you possibly— The same one I always meant to give him, Vincent said. Before tonight, before the room fills up, I'm going to sit down with Ryan Caldwell one more time, and I'm going to show him exactly what I have, the financial evidence, enough to send him to prison for years, and I'm going to tell him the truth, which is that Salvatore is using him, that the moment tonight is over, Salvatore will drop him and he'll take the fall alone, that he's not the hunter in this, he's the bait, and then I'm going to offer him the door. Vincent's jaw was set. He walks away tonight. He doesn't stand up. He testifies to what Salvatore's been doing instead, and in exchange, I don't send him to prison, and I help him rebuild his life somewhere far from all of this. A real chance. His last one. He'll never take it, Olivia said. You know him. His pride? Maybe, probably. But I have to offer it. Vincent's voice was quiet and certain. Because you told me something months ago that I haven't been able to put down. You said people should be judged by what they choose to become after their mistakes. And if I don't give Ryan the chance to make that choice, then I'm the one deciding he can't change. And who am I, of all the people on this earth, to decide that a man can't change? He almost smiled. I'm a Moretti trying not to be one. If I don't believe people can change, I have to give up on myself first. Olivia looked at this man, this impossible man, who was about to walk into a room full of enemies with a plan built entirely out of mercy and truth, and the refusal to become what everyone expected. And she understood that she had never in her life admired anyone the way she admired him in that moment. Okay, she said, then let's go give him the choice. The meeting with Ryan happened at 7 o'clock. In the back office of the old Black Rose Lounge, 4 hours before the room would fill with the most powerful people in the city. Vincent walked in alone, though Olivia waited just outside the door, close enough to hear. And what happened in that room was not what any of them expected, because when Vincent laid the evidence on the table, when he explained, calmly and without threat, exactly how much he had and exactly how many years it represented, Ryan Caldwell did not bluster. He did not sneer. He went very quiet. And when Vincent told him the truth about Salvatore, that he was bait and not hunter, that the old man would drop him. The second tonight was over, and let him take the entire fall alone, something in Ryan's face began to come apart. He told me, Ryan said in a voice Olivia had never heard from him, small and cracked, he told me I'd get everything back, my career, my reputation. He said after tonight, I'd be the man who exposed the Moretti family, that I'd be untouchable, that everyone who blacklisted me would come crawling. He lied, Vincent said. That's what he does. He finds men at the bottom, and he tells them exactly what they need to hear, and he uses them, and then he lets them drown. I know, Ryan. I grew up watching him do it. You're not the first man he's pointed at me, and if you go through with this, you'll just be the latest one to go to prison for him while he walks away clean. There was a long silence. Why are you telling me this? Ryan said finally. You could just let me destroy myself. You've got the evidence. You could stand up tonight and end me, and I'd deserve it. Why are you giving me a way out, after what I did to that girl, after what I did to you? And Olivia, standing in the hallway, held her breath. Because a young woman told me once, Vincent said quietly, that people should be judged by what they choose to become after their mistakes. I did terrible things, Ryan, or my family did, and I've spent 10 years trying to become someone else. If I get to try, so do you. This is your storage room, Ryan. This is the dark hallway. This is the moment where you find out who you actually are when someone's got their hand on your wrist and no one's coming to save you. He stood. So, what are you going to choose? Ryan Caldwell sat in that chair for a long time without answering, and every second of it stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Olivia, in the hallway, pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in, that this broken, prideful man would find, somewhere in himself, the one good choice he had left. Because everything hung on it now. Everything. You don't understand, Ryan said finally, and his voice had gone hoarse. It's not that simple. Salvatore doesn't ask. He owns. He gave me money, Vincent. Real money. I took it. I've been living on it for 2 months. If I don't do what he wants tonight, if I turn on him, he won't just drop me. He'll come for me. I've seen the kind of people he keeps around. I turn on him and I'm a dead man. And there it was, the trap inside the trap. Ryan was not just a weapon. He was a hostage. Salvatore had made sure of it. He had bought Ryan so thoroughly that betrayal meant death, and now the only path to safety Ryan could see was to go through with the very thing that would destroy him in a different way. The old man had left him no exits. Every door led back to Salvatore. But Vincent had spent his whole life studying Salvatore, and he had anticipated this too. You're right, Vincent said. If you just turn on him with nothing, he kills you. That's true, so don't turn on him with nothing. He leaned forward. Testify. Not to me. to Diane Caulfield. She's a federal investigator. She's been building a case against my uncle for 6 years, and she's never had a single witness willing to talk, because everyone who could talk is either loyal or dead. You'd be the first. And the moment you're a federal witness, Ryan, you're not a loose end anymore. You're a protected one. He can't touch you without bringing the entire weight of a federal investigation down on his head. And Salvatore is many things, but he is not stupid enough to murder a man under federal protection. The only way he wins by killing you is if you're nobody. So stop being nobody. Gehotiyata. Ryan stared at him. You're saying the way to survive him is to become more dangerous to kill than to leave alone. I'm saying the exact same thing my father taught me. Pointed the right direction for once, Vincent said. Make yourself the thing that costs too much to touch. You've spent your whole life being small enough that powerful men could push you around. Ryan Caldwell, the supervisor everyone feared but nobody respected. Bullying the people below you because you were terrified of the people above you. He said it without cruelty, just as fact, and Olivia heard Ryan's breath catch, because it was true, and it had never once been said to him out loud. This is your chance to stop being that, not by hurting someone weaker, by standing up to someone stronger, the one thing you've never done. The silence that followed was the longest yet. Why do you even care? Ryan said, and his voice cracked all the way through now. I put my hands on that girl. I tried to drag her into a storage room. You should hate me. You should want me destroyed. Why are you sitting here trying to save my life? I don't know that I'm trying to save your life, Vincent said quietly. Maybe I'm trying to save my own. Because if I stand up in that room tonight and destroy you, even though you deserve it, even though it would be justice, I become a man who destroys people when he has the chance. And I've spent 10 years trying not to be that man. You're not the only one who gets tested tonight, Ryan. This is my storage room, too. And in the hallway, Olivia put her hand over her mouth, because she understood then what Vincent had understood all along. That mercy was not something you gave to people because they earned it. It was something you gave because of who you decided to be. Ryan hadn't earned a single thing, and Vincent was offering it anyway, not for Ryan's sake, but to keep his own soul from calcifying into the thing his blood kept trying to make him. Ryan Caldwell put his face in his hands, and when he looked up, something had changed in him. Some hard shell that had been there so long he'd forgotten it was a shell. And underneath it was just a frightened, exhausted man who had made every wrong choice for years and was being offered, impossibly, one more chance to choose right. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll testify. God help me, I'll do it. Olivia had to grip the wall to stay standing. But the night was far from over, because it was 8 o'clock now, and in 3 hours the room upstairs would fill with the most powerful people in Chicago, and Salvatore Moretti was still out there, and Salvatore did not yet know that his weapon had just changed hands. Vincent came out of the office and found Olivia in the hallway, and he didn't have to ask how much she'd heard. She threw her arms around him, and he held her, and for one moment in the middle of the storm they just breathed. He said yes, she whispered. He actually said yes. He did. But Olivia, listen to me. This is where it gets dangerous. Right now, tonight, is the most dangerous it's been. Because Salvatore built this whole night to happen a certain way, and it's about to go wrong for him, publicly, in front of witnesses. And the most dangerous moment with a man like my uncle isn't when his plan is working. It's the instant he realizes it's failed, and he has to improvise. That's when people get hurt. He came here tonight expecting a coronation. He's about to get a funeral for everything he planned. We have no idea what he'll do when he sees it collapsing in real time. Is he here, in the building? He's here, Vincent said grimly. He wouldn't miss it. He's upstairs right now, somewhere in that crowd, waiting to watch me burn. He thinks he's about to win. And I need him to keep thinking that, right up until the last possible second, because the moment he knows the truth, he becomes unpredictable, and I have people I love in that room. At 8:30, the guests began to arrive. Olivia watched them come in from her position near the bar, the same marble bar, in the same lounge, where 3 months ago Ryan Caldwell had crushed her wrist, while 40 people watched and did nothing. The symmetry of it was not lost on her. She was standing in the exact place where she had been most powerless, and tonight she was one of the two people holding the whole thing together. The investors came in their expensive coats. The reporters came with their careful eyes. And somewhere among them, unhurried, warm, and lethal, came Salvatore Moretti. She spotted him before Vincent pointed him out. She knew him the way you know a snake in tall grass, some animal part of the brain going still and cold. He was older than she'd pictured, silver-haired and elegant, with the same warm, terrible smile she'd heard down the phone. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, and in a sense he did, shaking hands, laughing, an old lion at ease. And then his eyes found Olivia across the room, and he smiled at her, directly, and raised his glass a half-inch in a small private toast. "I see you," the gesture said. "I know you didn't take my offer, and I'm not worried in the slightest." Olivia raised her chin and did not look away. She would not give him that. She had learned 3 months ago in this exact room that the one thing you never do with a predator is show it your throat. At 9 o'clock, Vincent took the small stage at the front of the lounge to welcome his guests, and the room quieted, and Olivia's heart began to pound so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Because this was the moment. This was where Salvatore expected Ryan to rise from the crowd and begin the destruction. This was the trap, springing. Vincent thanked everyone for coming. He spoke calmly about the business, about the future, about the new restaurant Olivia had built, and the philosophy behind it. And Olivia watched Salvatore's face across the room, watched the old man wait, patient and pleased, for his moment. She watched him glance once toward the spot where Ryan was supposed to be, and she saw the first flicker of something cross his face when Ryan did not move. "Before we go any further," Vincent said, and his voice changed, and the whole room felt it. "I want to address something directly, because there are rumors about my family. There have always been rumors. Some of you have heard them. Some of you came tonight, if we're being honest, half hoping to see whether they were true." A ripple went through the crowd. "So let's not pretend. My family's history is real. My father, my uncle, the generation before me, they built part of their power through means I will not defend and will not repeat. That's the truth. I've never once said otherwise in private, and I won't insult you by lying about it in public." The room was dead silent now. This was not what anyone had expected, least of all Salvatore, whose warm smile had frozen very slightly at the edges. Because Vincent had just done the one thing that made Ryan's entire attack worthless. He had confessed it himself. You cannot expose a man who has already exposed himself. You cannot destroy a reputation with a secret the man has just told the room. In one move, calm and deliberate, Vincent had taken the bomb out of Ryan's hands and diffused it in front of everyone. "I'm telling you this," Vincent went on, "because I am not my father, and I am not my uncle. I took the legitimate parts of what my family built, and I walked away from the rest of it, and I have spent 10 years trying to build something clean. This restaurant, the new one, the people in this room whose lives have gotten better because of honest work. That's what I'm offering you. Not a family free of sin. A man who knows exactly where he came from and chose, every single day, to go somewhere else." He paused. "And there's someone here tonight who tried very hard to make sure you'd hear my history as an accusation instead of a confession. He was paid to do it. He was used. And a few hours ago, he made a different choice." Across the room, Salvatore Moretti set down his glass. "Ryan," Vincent said, "come on up." And Ryan Caldwell stood from the back of the room, pale and shaking, and walked to the stage. And Olivia watched Salvatore's face, and for one instant, before the old man smoothed it over, she saw it, the thing Vincent had promised would come. The exact moment Salvatore Moretti realized his plan had failed. The warmth vanished. What was underneath was ancient and reptilian and furious, and it was, for a single heartbeat, pointed straight at Vincent with an intent to kill that Olivia felt across 40 feet of crowded room. Ryan took the microphone with trembling hands. "My name is Ryan Caldwell," he said. 3 months ago in this room, I put my hands on a young woman named Olivia Carter and tried to drag her somewhere private because she'd embarrassed me by being better at her job than I was at mine." His voice shook, but he kept going. "I've spent my whole life being a coward, pushing around people weaker than me because I was scared of everyone stronger. And 2 months ago, a man found me at the lowest point of my life and offered me money to destroy Vincent Moretti, and I took it because I wanted revenge and because I was too much of a coward to say no." He looked out at the crowd, at the reporters, at the powerful faces. That man is in this room right now. His name is Salvatore Moretti, and I'm done being his weapon. I'm not that. The room erupted, and Salvatore Moretti, silver-haired and elegant, rose from his seat in the chaos and began to move, not toward the door, but toward the stage, toward Vincent and Olivia, with a calm, purposeful stride that was somehow more frightening than any run. Olivia moved before she thought about it. She stepped in front of the stage, in front of Vincent, and later she would not be able to explain why, except that some part of her had decided a long time ago that she was done letting powerful men have their way in this room. "Get out of my way, dear," Salvatore said low, only for her, that warm voice again, though the warmth was gone from his eyes entirely. "No," Olivia said. The same word she'd said to Ryan 3 months ago, the word that had started everything. For just a moment they stood there, the old lion and the young woman who had nothing to lose, and Salvatore looked at her with something that was almost horribly like respect. "You really aren't afraid," he murmured. "How strange. I've spent 60 years making people afraid, and here you are." "I told you on the phone," Olivia said quietly. "I already lost everything once. You don't have anything I need. That's why you can't win. Not tonight, not ever. You built your whole life on being the thing people are scared of. And the one person who isn't scared of you is standing in your way, and there's nothing you can do about it, because there's nothing left you can take from me." Salvatore Moretti looked at her for a long moment, and then slowly the fury drained out of his face, replaced by something colder and more calculating, the look of a man recalculating odds in real time and not liking the numbers, because he was, above all, a survivor. And a survivor knows when a room has turned. He looked past Olivia at Vincent, at Ryan, at the reporters already typing, at the federal investigator who had quietly appeared at the edge of the crowd, at the whole beautiful clean trap that his own nephew had built around him, using nothing but the truth. And he understood, the way only a man who had spent his life setting traps could understand, that he had just walked into one. "Well," Salvatore said softly to Vincent over Olivia's shoulder, "you did it the clean way. I didn't think you had it in you." His mouth twisted. "Your father would be ashamed. But then you never much cared what he thought, did you?" "No," Vincent said. "I didn't." Salvatore's eyes moved back to Olivia one last time. "You've made an enemy tonight, my dear. I don't forget." "Neither do I," Olivia said. "And I've got a federal investigator, 6 reporters, and a witness who'll swear to your name. Forget all you want. We wrote it down." Something flickered in the old man's eyes, and for the first time all night, it looked like fear. Just a flicker. And then he turned, unhurried to the last, and walked out of the Black Rose Lounge through the crowd that parted around him, and out into the night, a lion who had lost, walking away with his dignity because his dignity was the only thing left they couldn't take. He would not vanish. Olivia knew that. Men like Salvatore did not simply disappear because they lost one night. There would be a reckoning someday, in some form. But he would never again have any hold on Vincent, because Vincent had done the impossible thing. He had won without becoming him. He had made himself into a man who needed nothing the old world had to offer. And a man who needs nothing cannot be owned. The rest of the night was chaos and light. The reporters swarmed. Diane Caulfield took Ryan quietly aside to begin the process that would, over the coming months, unravel decades of Salvatore Moretti's careful work, one protected witness at last cracking open a door that 6 years of investigation had never managed to budge. The investors, far from fleeing, were mesmerized, because there is nothing the powerful love more than proximity to a real story, and they had just watched one unfold in front of them. But Olivia didn't see most of it, because in the middle of the chaos, Vincent stepped down off the stage and crossed to where she stood and stopped in front of her. And for a long moment, the two of them just looked at each other while the whole room roared around them. "You stepped in front of me," Vincent said. "When Salvatore came, you put yourself between him and me." "I know." "Why?" "Because you spent your whole life expecting to face men like him alone," Olivia said, "and I wanted you to know you don't anymore." She reached up and touched his face, the way she had in the office the night before. "You gave Ryan a choice, because I once told you people can change. You confessed your family's history instead of hiding it. You beat the most dangerous man in this city without becoming him, without hurting anyone, without one single thing your father would have recognized. Do you understand what you did tonight, Vincent? You proved it. The whole thing I've believed my entire life that nobody ever let me prove. That the good way can win. You're the evidence now, not me, you. And Vincent Moretti, the feared name, the man rumored to control the city, looked at the woman who had walked into his life on the worst night of hers and become the best thing in his, and something in his face that had been clenched tight for 10 long years. Finally let go. I need to tell you something, he said. And I've been trying to find the right moment for weeks, and there's never going to be a right moment. So I'm just going to say it in the middle of this circus, because that's apparently how our whole story goes. He took her hands. The night I stood up in this room 3 months ago, I told myself I was doing it because Sophia asked me to, because it was the right thing, because I couldn't watch a man hurt someone weaker. And all of that was true, but it wasn't the real reason. His voice dropped. The real reason is that I'd spent 10 years fighting to become a good man, and I had no idea if it was even possible, if any of it was real, or if I was just a Moretti wearing a costume. And then I watched you, a person with nothing, no power, no protection, choose to be kind anyway, choose to stand up anyway, and I thought, if she can do that with nothing, then maybe it's real. Maybe a person can actually be good on purpose. You didn't just change my restaurant, Olivia. You're the reason I finally believed I could be who I've been trying to be. You saved me before you ever knew my name. Olivia was crying now, openly in the middle of the roaring room. So here's what I want to ask you, Vincent said. And you can say no, the way you say no to everyone, the way you said no to Ryan and no to my uncle, and I'll respect it more than you'll ever know. But I have to ask. He took a breath. Stay. Not as my director of hospitality, though God knows I'd be lost without you. Stay as the person I build the rest of this with. All of it. The businesses, the second chances, the whole crazy experiment of trying to have power and stay human at the same time. I can't do it alone. I proved that tonight. Every good thing I did tonight, I did because you were standing next to me. So stay next to me. Say you'll stay. And Olivia Carter, 23 years old, the barmaid who remembered everyone's name and was never once remembered herself until one rainy night, looked at the man she loved in the room where she'd been most powerless, on the night they'd both become something new, and gave him the only answer her whole heart had. Yes, she said. I'll stay. The word yes did not fix everything overnight. Real life never works that way. The months that followed the night at the Black Rose were not a fairy tale. They were work. Hard, grinding, unglamorous work. The kind that doesn't show up in the story people tell later. Because a man does not walk away from a family like the Morettis without consequences. And Salvatore Moretti did not simply evaporate because he lost one room full of people. 6 weeks after that night, Olivia learned exactly how true that was. She was at the new restaurant closing up when Vincent called, and she knew from the first word that something was wrong. Someone tried to pull our permits, he said. All of them. Every property. A coordinated push through 3 different city offices, all in one morning. It's Salvatore. He can't touch us directly anymore, not with the federal case building, so he's doing it through paperwork, bureaucratic warfare, death by 1,000 forms. Olivia's stomach dropped. Can he do that? Can he actually shut us down that way? He can make it painful. He can make it expensive. He can tie us up in hearings for a year and hope we bleed out. Vincent exhaled. This is his new game, Olivia. Not a knife in the dark. 1,000 small cuts in the daylight, all technically legal, all deniable. He's decided that if he can't own me, he'll grind me down. And the maddening thing is I can't fight it the way I'd want to, because the old way, the fast way, is exactly the thing I gave up. And there it was, the cost of the clean way, arriving right on schedule. Olivia had known, standing in that room, that winning without becoming Salvatore would mean facing him again with both hands tied by her own principles. Now the bill was coming due. So we fight it the slow way, Olivia said, the same way we won the first time, out in the open, with lawyers and truth and patience. That's a year of my life minimum, maybe 2, endless hearings, and no guarantee. Then it's a year, Olivia said. You want to know the difference between you and your uncle? He can't afford a fair fight, because in a fair fight, over enough time, the truth wins. That's why he needs the dark. That's why he needs fear and shortcuts and threats. We don't. We can afford to be patient because we can afford to be honest. Let him try to drown us in paperwork. We'll answer every form. We'll show up to every hearing. And we'll still be standing when he runs out of forms. Because the one thing a man like that can never do is out-truth the truth. Me. There was a silence on the line, and then Vincent laughed softly. You know, my father used to say the same thing about patience, except he meant it about revenge. He'd wait years to get someone. You mean it about doing things right. His voice warmed. Same skill, Olivia, pointed the other way. You've turned into the best version of everything my family ever taught me and never understood. They fought it the slow way. It took 14 months. 14 months of hearings and filings and quiet, patient, exhausting refusal to be pushed out. And here was the twist that Salvatore, for all his cunning, never saw coming, because it was the one weapon he had never in his life possessed. Every single hearing was public. Every attempt he made to strangle Vincent's businesses through the back channels of the city came eventually into the light. And each time it did, Diane Caulfield's federal case grew a little stronger because a pattern of coordinated harassment against a man cooperating with a federal investigation is not a small thing. Salvatore, trying to grind Vincent down, was quietly building the case that would eventually take him apart. He was too proud to see it. That was the thing about men like Salvatore. They had used the same weapons for so long that they could not imagine those weapons being turned against them. He kept attacking, and every attack became evidence. And Ryan Caldwell, now a protected federal witness 18 months clean of the whole poisonous world, testified to all of it, calmly, in a courtroom, the coward who had finally learned to stand up to someone stronger. Salvatore Moretti was indicted on a Tuesday. Olivia always remembered that it was a Tuesday, because everything in this story seemed to happen on a Tuesday. The most feared man in Chicago, the old lion who had ruled through terror for 60 years, was brought down not by a knife in the dark, not by a rival with a gun, but by paperwork, patience, and the testimony of the very people he'd thought too weak to matter. He'd spent his life betting that the ruthless always beat the good. He lost the bet. "Do you feel anything?" Olivia asked Vincent, the night the news came through. "He's your uncle. He's the last of them. Whatever he was, he's the last piece of your family." Vincent was quiet for a long time. "I feel sad," he said finally. "Not for him exactly, for the whole thing, for a family that had so much and turned all of it into fear. My grandfather came to this country with nothing and built something real, and then it curdled, generation after generation, into what Salvatore became. And I keep thinking, it didn't have to. At any point, any one of them could have chosen differently. They just never did." He looked at her. "That's what I feel. Not triumph. Just, God, what a waste. All that power, and the only thing any of them ever built with it was more fear." "And then there was you," Olivia said softly. "And then there was me, because a barmaid with nothing showed me it was possible to do it another way." He pulled her close. "You broke the whole thing, Olivia, not the family business, the curse. Whatever it was in my blood that made all of them into what they were, it stops with me, and it stops because of you." But the story was not only about Vincent and Salvatore. It was, from the very first night, about Olivia. And the deepest change of all was the one that happened in her, because the young woman who had planted her feet on the floor of the Black Rose and refused to be dragged into the dark, the woman who had been so certain she was insignificant, that a single kind question could bring her to tears, had become someone she herself did not fully recognize. She was, by the end of that second year, the director of hospitality for a growing empire of restaurants and hotels, all built on the philosophy she had carried her whole life and never before been allowed to use. Places where employees were respected, where a young server could report a problem and be heard, where talent mattered more than status and connections, where nobody ever got dragged into a storage room while a room full of people watched and did nothing. She hired the people the world had thrown away. She tracked down every worker Ryan Caldwell had broken and driven out over the years, one by one, and offered them real jobs. She built training programs. She created a fund quietly, the way Vincent had taught her, to cover the medical bills and emergencies of the people who worked for them, so that no boy would ever again fall off a scaffold and have his mother weep in a hospital waiting room over money. And Sophia, Vincent's cousin, the woman whose single message had started everything, became one of Olivia's closest friends and the manager of the flagship restaurant. It was Sophia who said it best one night, watching Olivia move through a full dining room the way she always had, remembering everyone's name, making every stranger feel like the world had a place for them. "You know what's funny?" Sophia said. "I sent that message to Vincent because I thought you needed rescuing. I thought, someone has to save Olivia before Ryan destroys her. And it turned out you were never the one who needed saving. You were the one who saved everybody. Vincent, Ryan, me, all those people you hired back, you did all of it. I just sent one text." Olivia thought about that for a long time afterward, because it was true, and it was the thing she had come to understand about herself slowly over those 2 hard years. The world had spent 23 years telling her she was small. Her whole life had been a quiet campaign to convince her that she didn't matter, that she was replaceable, that the best she could hope for was to not be noticed. Ryan Caldwell had been only the loudest voice in a chorus that had been singing to her since she was a child, and every single one of them had been wrong. She had never been powerless. She had simply lived in a world that refused to recognize the kind of power she had. Because it was not the power to frighten people, or to control them, or to make them small. It was the power to see people, to make a stranger feel they belonged, to stand her ground when everyone told her to move, to refuse an old lion's bargain because she had already survived the worst thing he could threaten her with. That was power, too. It had always been power. The world just never called it that because the world was run, for the most part, by men like Ryan and Salvatore who could only recognize the kind of strength that hurt people. Olivia had spent her life thinking she needed someone to give her a chance. What she'd actually needed was to stop waiting for permission. 1 year to the day after the night at the Black Rose, Vincent brought her back to the lounge. It was theirs now, fully renovated, transformed into the first and best of everything they'd built. The marble bar was still there, the same bar where Olivia had spent 3 years being underestimated, the same bar where Ryan had crushed her wrist while 40 people watched. She ran her hand along it, and she felt the whole story move through her. All of it, everything that had happened in this room and everything that had grown out of it. Vincent came and stood beside her, and for a while neither of them spoke. "Do you remember," he said finally, "what I asked you the night we met? After it was all over, when you were wiping down this bar and I offered you a job? You asked if I was brave enough to take it. And do you remember what you asked me?" Olivia smiled. "I asked why you'd want me. I said you didn't even know me." "And I said I knew enough." Vincent turned to face her. "I want to ask you something in this room where all of it started, because there's a symmetry to it that I can't ignore, and because I've learned that the most important moments in my life all seem to happen right here, at this bar on a Tuesday." He reached into his jacket, and this time what came out was not a business card, and Olivia's breath caught. "1 year ago, I asked you to stay next to me, and you've done that. Through all of it, the hearings and the threats and my uncle and every hard thing this world could throw at us, you stayed. So now I want to ask you the bigger question, not to stay next to me, to build the rest of your life with me, all of it, as my wife." Olivia looked at the man kneeling in front of her in the room where she had been most powerless, and she understood that the story had come all the way around. That the barmaid who was dragged toward the dark 1 year ago was standing in the exact same spot, and that everything was different now. Not because a powerful man had rescued her, but because she had refused to be rescued, and had saved herself, and in the process had saved him too. "You know what the strangest part is?" she said, and her eyes were bright. 1 year ago, in this room, a man tried to convince me I was nothing, and a different man saw that I was something. But neither of them was right, Vincent, because you didn't make me something, and Ryan couldn't make me nothing. I was always exactly who I am. I just spent my whole life waiting for someone to notice, and the real change wasn't when you noticed. It was when I stopped needing you to." And she took his hands and drew him up to standing. "So yes, I'll marry you, but not because you saved me. Because you're the one person who ever understood that I didn't need saving. And that's the only kind of love I was ever going to say yes to." Vincent kissed her in the middle of the empty lounge, and outside the rain fell the way it had 1 year ago, and everything and nothing was the same. They were married that spring in a small ceremony full of the people they'd built their strange, beautiful life around. Sophia was there. Ryan was there, unbelievably, invited by Olivia herself, 3 years sober now from the whole toxic world he'd once served, running a small restaurant of his own 2 states away, a quiet, honest life he'd nearly thrown away and been given the impossible chance to reclaim. He cried during the vows. The man who had once dragged Olivia toward a storage room stood at her wedding and cried because a young woman had believed out loud in front of a whole room that people should be judged by what they choose to become after their mistakes, and then she had actually let him become it. Even Diane Caulfield came, the federal investigator who by then had used Ryan's testimony and 14 months of Salvatore's own reckless attacks to build the case that put the last of the old Morettis away for the rest of his life. She raised a glass to Olivia at the reception and said the thing that Olivia would carry with her forever. "I spent 6 years trying to bring that family down with the full power of the federal government," Diane said, "and I couldn't do it. You know what finally did? A woman who wasn't afraid of him. That's all it ever took. One person in the whole city who looked Salvatore Moretti in the eye and wasn't afraid. He built his entire empire on fear, and it turned out the whole thing could be brought down by a single person who simply refused to be scared. That's you, Olivia. That's what you were. The one thing his money couldn't buy and his threats couldn't touch. And that, in the end, was the truth of the whole story. The supervisor had tried to take away her confidence and failed. The world had spent 23 years trying to convince her she was insignificant and failed. A powerful old man had tried to buy her and then to frighten her and failed at both. And through all of it, one unremarkable young woman had held on to the one thing none of them could ever take, because she had never needed anyone's permission to have it in the first place. Her own worth, her own kindness, her own refusal to be moved. Years later, when the restaurants had grown into something bigger than either of them had ever imagined, when the fun they'd started had quietly changed thousands of lives, when the name Moretti finally meant something in Chicago other than fear, a young woman came to work at the flagship restaurant. She was nervous and poor and certain she didn't matter, the way Olivia had once been certain. And on her first day, she watched the owner of the whole empire, a woman the whole industry respected, cross the entire dining room to learn her name and ask gently whether she was doing all right. "Why does she care about me?" the girl whispered to Sophia afterward. "I'm nobody. I just started." And Sophia smiled, because she had heard a version of that question before, in this very room, a lifetime ago. "Let me tell you something," Sophia said. "There's no such thing as nobody. She learned that the hard way, right where you're standing, and now she spends her whole life making sure nobody else has to learn it the same way. Because sometimes the person who changes your life is not the one who saves you. Sometimes there is no rescue coming at all, and you have to plant your feet on the floor and refuse to be moved, and discover in the refusing that you were never as small as they told you. The world will try to convince you that you are powerless. Do not believe it. The quietest strength, the kindness that asks for nothing, the courage to stand your ground with nothing to protect you, that is a power greater than fear could ever be. And no one, no supervisor, no boss, no lion in the tall grass can take it from you unless you hand it over. Olivia Carter never handed it over, not on the worst night of her life and not on the best. And that is why, in the end, she did not just survive the men who tried to break her. She outlasted every single one of them and built something beautiful on the ground where they had tried to bury her, and proved for anyone willing to see it that the strongest person in any room is not the one everyone fears. It is the one who was never afraid. The 14 months of fighting Salvatore the slow way were harder on Olivia than she ever admitted to Vincent, and there was a stretch somewhere in the middle of it when she nearly broke. It was the 9th month. The hearings had been dragging on forever. One of their smaller properties had already been forced to close temporarily under the weight of Salvatore's manufactured code violations, and 11 people had lost their jobs, good people Olivia had hired herself with promises about how different this place would be. And standing in that empty restaurant, handing out final paychecks to workers who trusted her, Olivia felt something she had not felt since the night at the Black Rose. She felt powerless. "I told them," she said to Vincent that night, and she was crying, and she almost never cried anymore. "I told every single one of them that this place was safe, that we'd take care of them, that it wasn't like everywhere else. And now they're out on the street because your uncle decided to make a point, and I stood there lying to their faces about how it's temporary, when I don't even know if it's temporary." "It is temporary," Vincent said. "We'll reopen. We'll bring them all back." "You don't know that? That's the same thing I told them. We don't know anything." She wiped her face angrily. "This is what he wanted, isn't it? This exact moment, where I stand in an empty restaurant and start to wonder if the clean way was just a beautiful mistake. If we should have crushed him when we had the chance and saved all these people the suffering." She looked at Vincent, and there was something raw and frightening in her eyes. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me those 11 people didn't just pay the price for our principles." Hasas Totsi. And this was the deepest test of the whole story, because it was the moment when Olivia, the woman who had believed in the good way from the very beginning, the woman who had talked Vincent out of the phone call that would have made Ryan disappear, stood at the edge of losing her own faith. Vincent did not rush to comfort her. That was one of the things she loved about him. He let the question sit, because it deserved to sit, because 11 real people really had lost their jobs, and no amount of philosophy erased that. "I can't tell you they didn't pay a price," Vincent said finally. "They did. That's real. I won't insult them by pretending otherwise." He took her hands. "But let me ask you something. If we'd done it the other way, if I'd made Salvatore disappear a year ago, the way my father would have, those 11 people would still have their jobs tonight. That's true. But how many people would we have hurt to keep those 11 employed? How many other families would be grieving right now so that ours could sleep easy? You can't count the cost of the good way without counting the cost of the other way, too. And the other way's bill is always paid in blood. It's just paid by people you never have to look at." Olivia was quiet. "The reason it feels so much worse," Vincent went on, "is that the cost of doing right is always visible. You have to look those 11 people in the eye. The cost of doing wrong is invisible. It's paid by strangers in the dark. And that's exactly why it's so tempting, because you never have to see the receipt. My whole family chose the invisible bill their entire lives. That's how they slept at night. Not because they hurt fewer people, because they never had to watch." He squeezed her hands. "You're watching, Olivia. It's tearing you apart because you're watching. And I need you to understand that the watching is the whole point. It's the thing that makes us different. The day we stop being able to look at the people we hurt is the day we become them." Olivia sat with that for a long time, and then she wiped her face one more time and stood up, and something in her hardened back into place, not into coldness but into resolve. "Then we bring them back," she said. "Every single one of those 11, no matter how long the hearings take. We keep paying them. We keep them on the books even with the doors closed. It'll cost a fortune and I don't care. Because if the difference between us and Salvatore is that we have to look at the people we affect, then I am going to make sure that when I look at those 11 people, I can tell them the truth. That we never let go of them. Not for one day." And they did exactly that. For 5 months, while that restaurant sat closed under Salvatore's bureaucratic siege, Vincent and Olivia kept all 11 employees on full pay, doing nothing, waiting, because Olivia had decided that her word was going to mean something even when it cost her everything. It nearly bankrupted one of their holding companies. Vincent never once complained about the money, and when the hearings finally broke their way, when the manufactured violations were exposed for exactly what they were, that restaurant reopened with all 11 original employees standing in the doorway, and not one of them ever forgot that in the hardest year, the owners had refused to let them fall. That was the story that got around. Not the Mafia rumors, not the courtroom drama, that one. The story of a place that kept paying people to stay home rather than break its word. And it did more for the reputation of the name Moretti than any amount of money could have bought, because you cannot manufacture that. You can only earn it, one hard, expensive choice at a time. Boy, there was another moment, later, that Olivia never told anyone about except Vincent, and it was the moment she understood how completely she had changed. Salvatore's lawyer reached out to her, quietly, near the end, when the federal case was closing in, and the old man could see the walls coming down. The offer was extraordinary. A sum of money large enough to change her life forever. Generational money. The kind of money that meant she would never have to worry about anything again. The kind of money that could have erased the poverty of her childhood and her mother's childhood and her children's futures all at once. In exchange, all she had to do was develop a sudden gap in her memory about certain things she'd witnessed, a small softening of her testimony. Nothing dramatic, just enough uncertainty to give the old man a crack to slip through. And Olivia, who had grown up with nothing, who knew exactly what that money could mean, who had once cried over a single kind question because she'd been so starved for value, sat with that offer for one full night. She told Vincent about it the next morning. "You thought about it," he said. It was not an accusation. He was just watching her carefully. "Of course I thought about it," Olivia said. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't. Do you know what that money would have meant to the girl I used to be, the one who counted tips to make rent? She would have taken it in a heartbeat. She would have told herself it was survival, that people like us don't get to have principles, that the rich people making the rules never played fair anyway, so why should she?" Olivia looked at her hands. "I heard her, Vincent, all night. I heard the scared broke girl I used to be, begging me to take the money and be safe forever. But you're not going to take it. No." And she said it simply, without drama, which was how she'd learned the most important things get said. Because that scared girl and I made a deal a long time ago on a rainy Tuesday night in a lounge when a man had his hand around my wrist. I promised her that we were never going to let anyone convince us we were nothing ever again, and taking that money would break that promise, because it would mean I finally agreed with all of them. It would mean I decided my word had a price, and Salvatore found it. And everything I've been telling those young servers about how they matter, about how kindness is strength, about how you don't have to hand over your worth to survive, all of it would have been a lie, and I'd have known it was a lie every single day for the rest of my life while I spent his money. She shook her head. "I already lived through having no money, Vincent. I survived it. What I could not survive is knowing I sold the one thing about myself that was ever worth anything. So no. Tell his lawyer no. Tell him the girl who used to count tips says the price is too high. Vincent looked at her like she was the eighth wonder of the world. "You know," he said quietly, "my uncle offered men their heart's desire their whole lives, and almost none of them ever said no. Judges, politicians, men with everything to lose. He found their price every single time because everyone has a price. That was his entire philosophy. That's how he ran the world." He crossed the room and took her face in his hands. "And here you are, the girl with nothing. The one person in 60 years he couldn't put a number on. Do you understand what that makes you? You're the thing he swore didn't exist. You're proof that his entire worldview was wrong. That's why he's really going to lose, Olivia. Not because of the evidence or the testimony, because you exist, and your existence means the one rule his whole life was built on, the rule that everyone can be bought, was a lie." Salvatore Moretti went to prison for the rest of his natural life. And the story goes that on the last day, when it was all finally over, he asked, through his lawyer, to speak with just one person before he was taken away. He asked to speak with Olivia. Vincent was against it. Sophia was against it. Even Diane Caulfield thought it was a bad idea. But Olivia went because she had never in her life run from a powerful man, and she was not going to start now. He was smaller than she remembered. Prison does that. The elegant silver-haired lion who had raised his glass to her across a crowded room was an old man in a plain room now, and when he looked at her, the warmth was gone entirely, and what was left was just tired, ancient curiosity. "I wanted to see you one more time," Salvatore said. "The woman who beat me. Do you know how many men tried over 60 years? Powerful men, dangerous men, governments. And it was you, a barmaid." He studied her. "I've been trying to understand it. I have a great deal of time now to try to understand things. And I keep coming back to the same question. What was it? What did you have that all of them didn't? And Olivia looked at this broken old man who had spent his whole life making the world afraid, and she felt no triumph and no hatred, only a strange, sad pity. "I had nothing," she said. "That's the answer you're looking for and can't find. Every man you ever beat had something you could take: money, reputation, someone they loved, a future. You found the thing they were afraid to lose, and you owned them through it." She held his gaze. "I walked into your world with nothing. No money, no name, no power, nothing you could threaten. I'd already lost everything once before I ever met you, and I survived it. So when you came for me, you reached for the lever every other person had, the fear of losing something, and there was nothing there. You built your whole life learning to break people through what they cherish, and you finally met someone who'd already made peace with losing it all. That's it. That's the whole secret. You can't take anything from a person who already knows she can survive having nothing." "Baniamya." Salvatore looked at her for a long moment, and then, unbelievably, the old man laughed, softly, and there was something almost like admiration in it. "My brother built the family on fear," he said. "I always thought fear was the strongest force in the world. 60 years. I never lost that bet." He shook his head slowly. "And here at the end, a girl with empty pockets teaches me that the only person you truly cannot rule is the one with nothing left to lose. If I'd learned that 50 years ago, I might have been a different man." He waved a tired hand. "Go on. Go build your beautiful, clean things. Take care of my nephew. He was always too soft for our world, and it turns out he was right and I was wrong, and I'm too old now for it to do me any good." He turned away. "You win, Miss Carter. You win." And Olivia Carter walked out of that room and did not look back, because she had nothing left to prove to him or to anyone. The years that followed were good ones. Not perfect, because no real life is perfect, but good in the way that matters. Full of work that meant something, and people who mattered, and the quiet daily practice of building instead of breaking. Olivia and Vincent's empire grew, and everywhere it grew, it carried her philosophy like a seed. Restaurants where the dishwasher's recovery meetings came before the schedule. Hotels where a housekeeper could report a guest's bad behavior and be believed. A whole network of places built on the radical idea that a business is nothing but the people inside it, and that if you take care of the people, the rest takes care of itself. It made them wealthy, which everyone predicted, and it made them beloved, which almost no one had predicted, because the world had forgotten that decency, done consistently and at scale, is its own kind of fortune. They had children eventually, 2 of them, and Olivia raised them the way she wished someone had raised her, which is to say, she made absolutely certain they knew, every single day, that they mattered. She told them the story sometimes, the story of the lounge and the storage room and the man in the corner, but she always told it differently than the way strangers told it. Strangers told it as the story of the Mafia boss who saved the barmaid. Olivia told it as the story of the girl who saved herself and got some good help along the way. "The lesson isn't that a powerful man rescued me," she'd tell them. "The lesson is that I planted my feet. Everything good in our whole life started the second I decided I wasn't going to be moved. Nobody was coming to save me. And it turned out nobody had to, because I was stronger than everyone had spent my whole life telling me I was. You remember that. When the world tries to tell you you're small, and it will, you plant your feet, and you refuse, and you find out what you're actually made of." Vincent became, in time, exactly the man he had spent 10 agonizing years trying to become. The name Moretti, which had meant fear for 3 generations, came to mean something else entirely, and he lived long enough to see it, which is a mercy most people who try to change their family's story never get. On the wall of his office, he kept only one thing from the old days, a single photograph of his grandfather, the immigrant who had come with nothing and started it all before it curdled. Vincent kept it, he said, as a reminder that the story could have gone right the first time, and that it finally had 4 generations late. And Ryan Caldwell, the coward who had started it all with his hand around a young woman's wrist, lived out a quiet, honest life 2 states away. And every year on the anniversary of that night, he sent Olivia a single letter. He never asked for anything in the letters. He just told her how his year had gone, what his little restaurant was doing, how his life had turned out. And every year Olivia wrote back, because she had decided long ago that people should be judged by what they choose to become after their mistakes. And she was not going to be a hypocrite about the one belief that had organized her entire life. There was one line in one of Ryan's letters that Olivia kept folded in a drawer for the rest of her days. He wrote it in the 5th year. He wrote, "You could have destroyed me, and everyone would have said I deserved it. Instead, you told a whole room full of powerful people that I could change before I'd given you any reason to believe it. I've spent every day since trying to become the man you said I was. I don't know if I've made it, but I know I'd never have even tried if one person hadn't decided out loud that I was worth trying for. That's what you did. You didn't just refuse to be broken. You refused to break me back. And that's a stronger thing than anyone ever gave you credit for." Olivia read that letter many times over the years, because it named the thing she had come to understand about her own life, the thing that had been true since the very first night and that she had spent a lifetime learning to believe. The supervisor had tried to take her confidence and failed. The world had spent her whole childhood trying to convince her she was insignificant and failed. The most dangerous man in the city had tried to buy her and then to frighten her and failed at both. And through all of it, one ordinary young woman had held on to the one thing that could not be taken unless she chose to hand it over. She never handed it over. Not on the rainy night when a man's hand closed around her wrist and 40 people watched and did nothing. Not in the empty restaurant when 11 people lost their jobs and she wondered if her principals had a body count. Not in the long night when generational wealth sat in front of her and the scared broke girl inside her begged her to take it. Not once in a whole life full of moments designed to make her fold. She planted her feet every single time, and every single time she discovered the same thing, the thing that no one had ever let her discover before that rainy Tuesday. She was never as small as they told her she was. Because here is the truth that Olivia Carter's whole life proved, the truth worth carrying out of this story and into your own. Sometimes there is no rescue coming. Sometimes the room is full of good people, and every one of them is too afraid to move. Sometimes the only person standing between you and the dark is you. And in that moment, the world will whisper that you are powerless, that you should give in, that people like you were never meant to win. Do not believe it. The strongest person in any room is not the one everyone fears. It is not the one with the most money or the most power or the loudest voice. It is the one who cannot be bought and cannot be frightened because she has already survived the worst and knows, all the way down to the bone, that she will survive it again. It is the one who stays kind in a cruel world not because she is weak, but because she has decided that her kindness is hers and no one gets to take it. It is the one who plants her feet and looks the whole frightening world in the eye and says the one word that changes everything. No. Olivia Carter said that word on the worst night of her life, with nothing to protect her and no one coming to help. And that single word, spoken by a barmaid the whole world had overlooked, brought down an empire of fear, saved a broken man, redeemed another, built something beautiful on the ground where they'd tried to bury her, and proved for anyone willing to see it that the quietest strength in the world is stronger than all the fear ever assembled against it. She was never powerless. She was never small. She was never nothing. She was, from the very first moment to the very last, the strongest person in every room she ever walked into. And she was strongest of all because she was never, for one single moment, afraid. Here is a philosophical coda to Part 5, meditating on love as the story understood it. There is a question worth sitting with now that the whole story has been told, and it is the question that lived underneath every single thing that happened, from the first night to the last. What was the love between Olivia and Vincent actually made of? Because the world has a story about love, a story it tells over and over, and it is almost entirely a lie. And this story was the correction of that lie. The world story says that love is rescue. It says the strong one saves the weak one. It says somewhere out there is a powerful person who will see you in your worst moment, sweep in, lift you out of your small, hard life, and carry you into safety. The whole culture is soaked in this story, the rich man and the poor girl, the powerful stranger in the corner who fixes everything. And on the surface, that is exactly what this story looked like. A feared and powerful man saw a barmaid in trouble and changed her life. If you were not paying attention, you could walk away believing you had just heard the oldest fairy tale in the world. But you would be wrong. And the difference between what it looked like and what it was is the most important thing in this entire story. Because Vincent Moretti did not save Olivia Carter. He said so himself over and over, and he meant it. What he did was see her, and seeing is the opposite of saving, though the world constantly confuses the two. When you save someone, you make them smaller. You confirm that they were helpless, that they needed you, that the power ran one direction, from you down to them. Rescue always creates a debt. That is why Olivia was so afraid of Vincent at the beginning, why her friend Dana warned her that men like that hand out debts and one day come to collect. Because a rescue is a transaction, and the person rescued spends the rest of their life paying it back, in gratitude, in loyalty, in a quiet, permanent understanding of who was strong and who was weak. But that is not what happened. Vincent looked at Olivia and did not see someone to save. He saw someone who was already whole, already strong, already worth more than the entire room she was standing in, and who had simply never been recognized. And that changes everything. Because recognition, unlike rescue, does not create a debt. It creates freedom. When someone truly sees you, they are not adding something to you that was missing. They are witnessing something that was always there, and you owe them nothing for it, except perhaps the astonishing relief of finally being known. That is the first truth this story tells about love. Real love does not rescue, it recognizes. The person who loves you rightly is not the one who saves you from your life. It is the one who looks at you and sees clearly the strength you had all along and refuses to let you keep believing you are small. And here is the second truth, which is harder and which most people spend their whole lives never learning. The love that lasts is not the love between a strong person and a weak one. It is the love between two people who each make the other stronger. Look at what actually happened between them. Olivia did not simply receive from Vincent. She gave. She gave him the one thing his power and money could never buy, the proof that a person could be good on purpose in a hard world. She talked him out of the phone call that would have made him a murderer. She stood between him and his uncle. She reminded him at every crossroads of who he had decided to become. Vincent, the most powerful man in the city, was made better, made whole, made human by a barmaid with nothing. And Olivia, who had been told her whole life that she was insignificant, was made to finally see her own worth by a man who witnessed it and named it out loud. They were not a rescuer and a rescued. They were two people, each carrying a wound the other happened to be shaped to heal. His wound was that he had never seen goodness survive in a hard world, and so did not believe he could be good. Her wound was that she had never been seen, and so did not believe she was worth anything. And love, real love, is what happens when two wounds turn out to fit together, when the exact thing you are missing is the exact thing the other person has too much of, and you spend your lives quietly completing each other, not out of need, but out of the deep, astonished gratitude of having been matched so precisely by a universe that usually feels so random. This is why the story insisted, again and again, that they did not fall in love because he saved her. They fell in love because they challenged each other, because she reminded him that kindness was strength, and he reminded her that ambition was nothing to apologize for, because neither of them made the other smaller. That is the whole thing. That is the entire secret of the love that lasts. It does not diminish. It magnifies. You know you have found the right one not when they make you feel taken care of, though there is nothing wrong with being taken care of, but when they make you feel more like yourself, more capable, more brave, more you than you have ever felt alone. And there is a third truth, the deepest one, and it is the reason Olivia was able to love at all. She could only love Vincent freely because she did not need him. This sounds cold, and it is the opposite of cold. It is the warmest truth there is. Remember the night Salvatore called her and offered her safety if she would only abandon Vincent. Remember that she said no, not because she was clinging to a man who completed her, but because she had already made peace with losing everything, including him, before she would betray who she was. Her love was not desperation. It was choice. She did not stay with Vincent because she was afraid of being alone, or afraid of being poor again, or afraid of losing the life they had built. She stayed because she wanted to, freely, having already accepted that she could survive without any of it. And that is the strange paradox at the very center of love, the thing almost no one understands. The only love worth having is the love you do not need. Because love that comes from need is not really love at all. It is fear wearing love's clothes. The person who stays with you because they are terrified of being alone does not love you. They love not being alone, and you happen to be the one preventing it. But the person who could survive without you, who has looked squarely at a life without you and knows they would endure it, and who chooses you anyway, every single day, out of nothing but desire and not one drop of need, that person's love is the only kind that is fully free. And only free love is real love. Everything else is a negotiation with fear. Olivia loved Vincent this way because life had, cruelly and then kindly, taught her not to need anything. She had survived having nothing. She had made her peace with the bottom. And so when she gave her heart, it was a gift and not a bargain, an offering and not a lifeline. That is why Salvatore could not use it against her. He kept looking for the thread of need he could pull to unravel her, the way he had unraveled everyone else. And there was no thread, because her love was not woven out of need. It was woven out of freedom. And you cannot blackmail a free person. You can only kill them, and even that does not make them yours. So here is what this whole long story, in the end, was really about. Not a mafia boss and a barmaid, not power and rescue. It was about the difference between two kinds of love, and the quiet insistence that the world has been selling us the wrong one our whole lives. The world sells us love as rescue, love as need, love as the strong completing the weak. And that love is everywhere, and it fails everywhere, and it fills the world with people who mistook their fear of loneliness for devotion and woke up 20 years later next to a stranger they never actually chose. And then there is the other love, the rare one. The love that recognizes instead of rescues. The love that makes both people stronger instead of trapping one in gratitude to the other. The love that is chosen freely by two people who do not need each other and want each other anyway, who have each made peace with surviving alone and decided in full freedom that they would rather build something together. That love does not diminish anyone. It does not create debts. It does not run on fear. It is two whole people standing side by side, each one strong on their own, who have discovered that they are even more themselves together than apart. That is the love Olivia Carter found. And notice that she could only find it because she first became whole on her own. The night she planted her feet in that lounge with no one coming to help her, she was not yet in love with anyone. She was simply becoming a person who could not be moved, and that solitary, unbreakable wholeness was the exact thing that made her capable of a love that did not shrink her. She did not find love and then become strong. She became strong, alone, with nothing, and that strength was the only ground on which a real love could ever have been built. So if you take one thing from this whole story, take this. Do not wait to be rescued. There is no one coming to save you, and even if there were, being saved is a smaller life than the one you are capable of. Become whole first. Plant your feet. Make your peace with surviving alone, with having nothing, with losing it all, because that peace is not despair. It is the foundation of every free choice you will ever make. And then, from that place of wholeness, if love comes, it will be the real kind. The kind that recognizes you instead of rescuing you. The kind that makes you more, not less. The kind you choose in perfect freedom because you want it, and not one atom because you need it. Olivia Carter did not find love because a powerful man saved a helpless girl. She found love because a whole woman met a whole man, and each one saw the other clearly, and each one made the other braver. And neither one ever needed the other to survive, and that is precisely why what they had could never be broken. Because the strongest love, like the strongest person, is the one that was never, for one single moment, built on fear.